can make it harder to get
discussion
in
we have,
shape.
the better.
So I got back into the game with Nugenics. I'm feeling stronger with a lot more energy and drive. You want to get back into shape? Get Nugenics. All you have to do is send one simple text.
You post,
Frank's right. Just text BODY to 42424 to get a complimentary bottle of award-winning Nugenics, the #1 selling free testosterone booster at GNC. Its unique man-boosting formula is powered by Testofen, a patented key ingredient clinically researched to help a man feel stronger, leaner, more energetic, and more passionate.
And guys, she'll like the difference too.
Nugenics samples are not available in stores. To get your
Hey, Dave, you
complimentary
there?
bottle, text BODY to 42424. That's BODY to
Might take a break.
42424.
Shop Lowe's and take advantage of great savings to make updates indoors. Add new color to your walls with paint and primer in one, now starting at $18.98. And if you've been craving new appliances, get up to 25% off appliance special values on some of the best brands in the business. All projects have a starting point. Start with Lowe's. $18.98 price applies to Olympic Assure paints, U.S. only. Appliance offer valid through January 24th. Exclusions apply. See store for details, U.S. only.
If you're a small business, first impressions can make all the difference. With Grasshopper, you get all the features of a professional business phone system on your mobile phone. Choose a business phone number, make calls, and send texts. Stay connected and work from anywhere with features like Wi-Fi calling and our desktop app. Set up your account in minutes with no long-term contracts and 24/7 customer support. Make your small business big. Now get $20 off your first month when you visit grasshopper.com/radio. That's grasshopper.com/radio.
Ed Sheeran and Beyonce's Perfect, #1 in the Billboard Hot 100 singles
God, I've
chart
never even
for
heard
a
of this
fifth
dude.
week.
He's like coming to Superdome, I think, or
Who, Ed Sheeran?
yeah.
Yeah, my wife.
I know. Don't be rolling your eyes. At
I'm
me.
not rolling. I'm not rolling my
I
eyes.
heard one
I'm
of
just
his.
saying.
his
I heard one of his
relationship
songs
with
like when they were
clothing
playing the
chain
commercial.
H&M.
I
The
was,
Starboard singer
there's a big hit he
decision
had.
after
Yeah, I
a
wouldn't
photo
even
went
say.
viral
I
of
mean,
a black child modeling a green hoodie
Ed
that reads,
Sheeran
"Fool's
is
Monkey in the
problematic
jungle."
for a
The
few
Weeknd
reasons.
writing,
Obviously,
he was
when
shocked,
his
embarrassed by the
first
photo,
album
deeply
came out,
offended, so he'd no
like
longer
he
be
had
working
one
with
song.
the
It's called
retailer that he's
"Don't,"
collaborated
and it's
with
him
on
basically
two
like
collections.
pseudo
When
rapping and
it's
singing
back
at the
to
same
dazzling
time,
fans
and people
with
were
her
just like,
newly
"Oh my
announced
God, Ed
engagement
Sheeran's
to
gonna bring
producer
back
boyfriend
like hip
Brad
hop," and then
Falchuk.
immediately
Paltrow
people were
and
like,
confirming her
"This
engagement
is
on the cover of her
absolutely
Goop
problematic on
magazine,
so
with a
many
black and
levels."
white
Because
photo
I mean,
of the
obviously
two. They released a joint
he's a
statement
lily
saying
white
they feel
ginger,
incredibly
you know,
lucky
Englishman.
to be at this
Right.
point in their relationship.
But I mean, he's a
and
good
life.
singer. I mean, he's
Meantime,
talented
Lena
as all
Dunham
get
and
out.
Jack Antonoff are
not
over
my stuff,
multiple
but I
news
mean, hey,
outlets
whatever.
reporting that the girls actress and the Bleachers frontman have split after more than 5 years of dating. The decision reportedly amicable, and the two said to be on good terms, with the source saying they simply grew apart. Rod Stewart and Cyndi Lauper hoping to duplicate the massive success of their 2017 joint summer tour with a new
Cyndi
run
Lauper
of
will be at
2018
Family
dates.
Gras.
The trek includes
Yeah.
22 dates across
Rod
North
Stewart will be
America
in,
starting
didn't
June 25th at the Hollywood Bowl in Los Angeles and closing in Seattle on September 1st.
And
That's
Anita Baker at
Entertainment,
Jazz
Jennifer
Fest.
Colsoni, NBC
Can't wait.
News Radio.
Cannot wait.
I gave up Jazz Festival.
Hulu says
That's also fair.
subscribers are up almost 40%
I haven't been in a while, and I just want,
2016
and I want to
to
believe that
almost
this is going to be the best
17
one,
million.
and then not have to do it
Bloomberg
for a
says
little while.
the streaming
That's
service
the
owned
thing.
by
I go like
Fox,
once every
Disney,
few years.
Comcast, and Time Warner also reached $1 billion in revenue last year for the first time. Hulu originally was started to stream broadcast television, but is steadily making original content and won the Golden Globe Award for Best TV Drama with Handmaid's Tale. For comparison, though, Netflix has more than 109 million customers worldwide. Kate Spade is out with a line of smartwatches that'll be powered by Android Wear 2.0 and have a 1.2-inch circular OLED display. The new models come with an app that asks you what color you're wearing and automatically changes the watch face color to match your outfit. Patent analytics firm IFI says the most tech patents were awarded to e-cigarette technology last year, beating out 3D printing, AI, machine learning, and autonomous vehicles. Tech Report, Larry Olson, NBC News Radio.
Duncan Holder back at you on Thursday, January 11th. Kind of a foggy, gray day in New Orleans. but it beats the heck out of what is going on up in Minneapolis. I checked the weather forecast today. I think the high is 5. Single digits is the high.
Got to get yourself a parka, buddy.
So I am endeavoring to get gloves and a scarf today, which I don't have in my ensemble. I did at one point, but I don't know where they're at. I can't find them. So I'm going to make a visit on the way home to a local clothier, try and find something.
Haberdasher.
Yes, to wrap up, because, look, I know it's an indoor stadium. U.S. Bank Stadium is enclosed, but goodness.
You got to get in there.
Yes, that's true. Got to find our way there. They promote that the entire downtown grid is connected by skywalks, so you never actually have to leave, which I think, first of all, you don't want to promote that, right? That automatically tells you they're in the Antarctic. But they nevertheless are going to connect us supposedly to 1 block away from the U.S. Bank Stadium. Larry, of course, we should bring that up today. Larry, my cohort in crime, is got the day off, so I am taking over the driver's seat of the show and welcoming in Jim Derry.
The ratings just dropped 2 full points. Sorry, Dave.
Again.
Pinch hitting for Larry Holder, and, of course, Kaki Clad Verdan, as always, here on Thursday and Friday. So we've got a packed show today, guys.
Really good show.
We're going to talk all about high school basketball today.
Oh, you want to break that news, Jim?
I don't think we're going to get to that, but, it's on the agenda. But we do have a great show. In the first hour, we want to focus mainly on this big matchup that we were alluding to earlier, the Saints-Vikings NFC divisional playoff game. The Saints have only been in 5 of these games in their history. As you would know, longtime Saints fans, it's hard to just get to this game, much less win one. And so we want to break it all down.
Especially where this team started about 4 months ago.
It's true.
I don't even think you are, I would consider, one of the more optimistic writers that we have on staff, and I don't think you could have predicted this team would be where they are right now.
Well, I did not jump off the bandwagon.
No, you didn't.
I thought they would be good. I didn't think they'd quite be this good this soon.
I don't think anyone could have predicted this.
No, I don't even think Sean Payton or Drew Brees would have predicted that these young cats, Marshawn Lattimore, Alvin Kamara, would have the impact they had immediately the way they did.
Right.
So we're going to talk about that game, and joining us in the first hour will be Fletcher Mackel, the sports director at WDSU-TV. He'll be on with us at 10:30. Then right after Fletcher, we've got an old friend of mine, Kevin Seifert, who's based in Minneapolis. Kevin covered the Vikings for a number of years for the Minneapolis Star-Tribune. He now works at ESPN. He's a national NFL columnist and has great insight to the Vikings, but we'll also have insight on the other games. So we'll talk to Kevin about this matchup as well. Then in the second hour, we're going down to Florida for a couple of guys. Pete Prisco, another old friend, works at CBS Sports, covers the NFL.
Speaking of old friends.
And even an older friend, John Reed, who now works at the Jacksonville Times-Union in Jacksonville, Florida, covers the Jaguars for the Times-Union, and, of course, worked here. I'm sure you're familiar with John Reed. Worked here for a number of years. Was actually the longest tenured reporter on our staff for a while. Covered the Hornets and Pelicans for us expertly for a number of years. And now both Pete and John are in the Jacksonville area. So Pete will kind of give us a breakdown. We'll look at some of the other games in the NFL playoffs this weekend, because we were talking right before we went on the air. I actually think there could be some upsets according to the line this week. And one of the ones you think is going to – you fall in line with me. You're bullish on the Eagles.
I think that's the best bet of the playoffs and one of the best bets of the NFL season, period.
Why?
The top seed at home. I mean, everyone talks about Nick Foles. We forget about how good the Eagles' defense is and how good they have been. And they've had a week off. Atlanta had to go all the way across the country to L.A., and now they come home for a few days. Now they got to go up to Philly, who's been sitting around waiting for them. And I tell you, I mean, everyone wants to talk about the NFC Championship game in the Dome. I think the Saints have a better chance to win in Minnesota than Atlanta has to win in Philadelphia.
I do too. 100% agree with you on that. And I think what everybody's focusing on is that one game that Foles did not play well against the Raiders because it was on national TV.
That's right.
But they forget the game before, and now I realize it was the New York Giants, but he threw 4 touchdown passes. He had a really high rating. He played well when he came in against the Rams. He's played well in the past, and you can't really look at that
Nick
Cowboys
Foles
game.
isn't some guy that's just been sitting around as a backup his whole career.
Right.
I mean, the guy has started several NFL games throughout his career and has been semi-successful. I mean, he's not just a regular backup, and it's not they're not just counting on Nick Foles. I mean, Atlanta's going to have to find a way to score 17 or 20 points, and Philadelphia has a fantastic run defense. If they take Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman out of the game, which I think there's a good chance, then you're relying on what Matt Ryan hasn't done all season. He hasn't thrown more than 2 touchdown passes in any game this season. He's going to have to find a way to do it in this one for Atlanta to win, and I don't know that he can do that.
I agree. And let me real quick, Clyde, because I want to get your thoughts on this. But if you want to join the program, the first half hour is going to be pretty wide open. So if you want to get your thoughts in on this Vikings-Saints game or any of these games, if you think Jim and I are crazy and the Falcons are going to win,
Well, I'm crazy.
weigh in on that.
About
The number to call is 504-260-1280. Love to get your thoughts as well. So, Clyde, I'm sorry I cut you off.
No, I was just going to say to that point, though, isn't that the same thing that we're talking about with the Saints-Vikings matchup? We're basically talking about trying to, and it's basically playing the odds of what are you more comfortable or what do you feel strongest with is likely to happen. Do you feel that the Saints have a great shot because they have the edge with a more experienced quarterback compared to Minnesota with Case Keenum and Drew Brees? Or do you still come back to the fact that the Saints have to go to Minnesota, and then after playing Minnesota once already this year, that you're going against the same defense that's also had a week to prepare, that's had a week off to rest up and get healthy, and then they're going up against the same thing too. So is it more or less the idea of, like, what do you feel is the strongest chess piece in these two matchups regarding Philadelphia and Atlanta and the Saints and the Vikings? Because you're really looking at kind of the same two things. You're looking at Matt Ryan against Nick Foles, Drew Brees against Case Keenum. But what we're in essence, what we're talking about two legitimately great defenses in Philadelphia and Minnesota.
Yeah, I think the Eagles are 4th in the league in total defense. The Vikings are number 1. And when you look at the Vikings defense, and we'll get into this with Fletcher and Kevin when they join the program here later this hour, but there is no weakness in the Vikings defense. I've looked at it
None.
statistically.
0.
Personnel-wise, I mean, they're good on all 3 levels. They're well coached, but statistically, I mean, they have the low. I didn't know this until I read Herbie's story today. Their third down defense, they've allowed 25% conversion rate. It's the lowest in the NFL since they started keeping the stat in 1991. I mean, that's amazing.
Which means don't get into 3rd and long.
Exactly. And the Saints have struggled this year on 3rd down. So that obviously, situationally, Sean Payton and Drew Brees are working on their 3rd down calls. That's going to be critical in this game. And then the other thing that they're really strong at, they're 2nd in the league in red zone defense. And the Saints struggled in the red zone against them in that opening game.
Right.
And I know everybody's saying, well, that won't happen again. Well, it might, because this it's a really good red zone defense. It's not going to be easy to score.
Why won't it happen again? I mean,
it could.
There are certain things that and I wrote this yesterday, that, what doesn't matter is the score of the first game. And it is a different team. The Saints, they don't have to worry about how they're going to fit in Adrian Peterson, the defensive secondary. This defense, which is a young defense for the most part, they've grown so much over the past 17 games. But at the same time, there are many things that you can take out of this game and take out of that game. And one of the things is how tough the line had to deal with Everson Griffin and the rest of that just brutal Minnesota Vikings front line. That part's not going to be any different.
No,
so
you're right.
That's where they're going to have to figure out. And without Andrus Peat in there, and Armstead, is he 100%? I don't know. I would doubt he's going to be 100% at this point of the season. Who is 100% at this point of the season? But that left side of the line, and now with Kelemene in there, I mean, they're going to have to figure out a way to protect Drew's backside, and that's not an easy thing to do.
No, it's weird. Jim and I are both in agreement on a lot of things.
Except on the prediction.
This is a great start to the show today.
Very scary.
Brad in New Orleans.
Let's go to the phone lines real quick. First of all, 504-260-1280 is the number to call if you want to get into the program. Brad in New Orleans. Brad, how you doing today? Welcome into the program.
Doing good, thanks. My first thing is,
I think the Falcons are going to, without question, beat the Eagles. With the Eagles not having Carson Wentz, I think it's going to be hard for them to score in that defense. So if we can win, we'll be at home. But I think y'all kind of just hit all the points I wanted to say. Without Andrews Pete, I think they're going to attack that left side. And hopefully they have something that they can plan to protect the blind side. But then also third down and red zone, it seems that over the past 5 or 6 games we've kind of struggled in that area. So I think it's going to be pretty tough to beat the Vikings at home. But hopefully they can find a way to do it.
Yeah, Brad, good points all the way around. And I'm with you on that. Like, I feel logically, if you look at this game and remove the emotion that a lot of fans obviously have, you'd say that the Vikings should win the game. They're 7-1 in this stadium, 12-4 there over the course of 2 seasons, and that includes losing their starting quarterback last year. But something just in my gut says the Saints are going to win, and I'm going with my gut. I feel like I'm pulling a Sean Payton here, rolling the dice, but I'm picking the Saints to win on gut alone. I just feel like it might be their year.
Well, and one of the things I wrote yesterday is my gut also says the Saints going to win, but when I put my gut in, and I normally, when I'm making picks, gut trumps logic, but in this particular case, when you put all the logic together, I couldn't ignore it. And the Saints are playing like they're a team of destiny, but I mean the defense just, to me, it kind of, with Case Keenum coming in his first playoff game, they haven't played that well. I think the first quarter you're going to get a real feel on whether the Saints have a legitimate chance to win the game, because I'm not saying they have to be winning after the first quarter, but I think just the feel and the eye test. If they pass the eye test, then we'll know. But in this case, when you put all the things together and all the facts together, you're talking about a Minnesota team that has not allowed more than 19 points at home this season in any game.
Right.
And they've allowed only 24 over the last 3 games combined, including 7 to the Rams. So when you start putting all these things together, and it's just hard to ignore those facts.
They went to Atlanta, that high-powered Atlanta offense, in Mercedes-Benz Stadium there, and gave up 9 points.
Yeah.
That's legit.
Yeah.
That's not playing at home. That's not playing a bad quarterback. That's playing a former MVP, and they held them to 9 points. That speaks to how good that defense is.
And their only loss the last 2.5 months is at Carolina, where they kind of threw up a stinker, and Cam might have played his best game in that one. And so, when you're talking about you're taking tests in college and the professor gives you 5 exams and throws the worst one out, I think it's the case where you can kind of throw that one out. Now, will that happen on Sunday? I think we all know what number 9 can do, but we all know that the Saints haven't had a lot of success on the road in the playoffs. Drew's going to have to be on his A game and have to be at least, at the minimum, as good as he was this past Sunday, because I guarantee you that the game plan of the Vikings is going to be similar to what the Panthers did, shut down Ingram and Kamara, but the difference is they'll be able to stop Drew a little bit more than the Panthers were.
And then really, I think to the caller's point, too, that I think we haven't talked about enough, but I think it's something that we'll get into probably the rest of at least this hour and then probably tomorrow. 20 guys now have gone on the IR for the Saints this season. If you include, obviously, Tony McDaniel yesterday and Andrews Pete, obviously with that gruesome injury he suffered last Sunday. 20 guys have gone down on this team that are not coming back. It's been next man up for the Saints all season. It's been, okay, well, we lost this guy, we're going to plug this guy in, and this guy steps up. One guy I think about specifically is Manti Te'o. Yeah. Manti Te'o has absolutely stepped into the middle of that linebacking core and has completely locked it down when people were like, is this guy going to even make it past a year? So I think, and for me specifically, is when does that eventually catch up and where? Especially if we're talking about this Vikings offense with Case Keenum. If Case Keenum's not going to turn the ball over, if they're going to try to be as dynamic with the football, or especially if they're going to try to get it out, out to the receivers and, with no Dalvin Cook, how is specifically the defense going to be able to counteract? And then how is the offense at the same time going to try to keep Drew Brees upright?
Good points all the way around. All right, let's take our first break, and when we come back, I want to talk about another aspect of the game that I think is going to be a factor that we haven't talked about so far. All right, let's talk about that after this break. You're listening to Sports 1280, NOLA.com, the iHeartRadio app. We are Dunc and Holder.
Your shot at $1,000 now. Text the keyword win.
Definitely.
To
Crowd. It's going to be the same as the Saints had in their favor.
Plus iHeartRadio.
Exactly what Morstead said.
Standard data and message rates apply. That's win to 200-200.
This will be a little shorter segment before we get into it with Fletcher.
I am.
We've ordered some extra strong coffee and took away his Bailey's Irish Cream. Josh Innes, morning 6 to 10.
You get the point on Sports 1280.
New Orleans.
This week on Big Easy Deals, get a family 4-pack to the Audubon Aquarium of the Americas. At the aquarium, penguins, stingrays, sharks, and other
Saints are
deep-sea
not
creatures
going to
await your visit.
London
Get
next
your
year.
family
It's
4-pack for only $48 at Fox Sports.
It was, I just had it pulled up. It was like Seahawks, Raiders,
Eagles, Jags,
Shop lows and take
Titans, Chargers.
savings to make
All right, bud.
updates indoors. Add
Clear call board.
Okay,
in
bud.
one, now starting at
Hey,
$18.98.
Dave.
Yeah.
Would it be
Craving
is
new
it
appliances?
kosher
Get
to
up to
do a
25%
like a
off
really
appliance
short
special
segment here
values
and
on some of
then
the
go
best
back to
brands.
Fletcher a little early? Is that possible?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah,
All right,
it's
let's
fine.
do that because Fletcher gets a little long-winded, and if we get to him a little early.
U.S. only.
All right, so I'll start bumping you out at 29.
Perfect.
We heard audio.
If you're a small business, first impressions can make all the difference. With Grasshopper, you get all the features of a professional business phone system on your mobile phone. Choose a business phone number, make calls, and send texts. Stay connected and work from anywhere with features like Wi-Fi calling and our desktop app. Set up your account in minutes.
Yeah, no, I guess maybe I should probably bump you out sooner than that.
Yeah, you want to do it a little sooner?
support.
We can do it. If it's okay, we'll do it sooner. We'll just come back, talk about this noise factor.
Yeah, let's just do we'll do a quick 4-minute segment, and we'll try to get it with Fletch right at 10:30.
Okay, perfect.
Williams drops a career-high 50 points. The Clippers get a 125-106 win over the Warriors in Oakland. Sweet Lou on LA's first 50-point game since 1990.
It's a great accomplishment. For me, it was more important to get a win.
Meanwhile, with no Splash Brothers in the lineup for Golden State, Kevin Durant put up 40 points in the loss, becoming the second youngest player to reach 20,000
no Splash
career
Brothers in the
points
lineup. They
behind
get
only
40 from
LeBron
Durant, they win.
James.
Yeah, right.
College football national champion
Pelicans miss AD
Alabama
and they
is
can't
losing
beat the
trio
Wait, no,
of
Grizzlies without Mike Conley.
No, the Warriors lost last night.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, because Lou Williams dropped 50.
He's been on fire.
Yes, he has.
Did you see the Boogie last play?
Yeah, what was that?
He'll return to
That I don't even blame him. I blame the coaching.
Well,
I don't know what they're doing.
Agreeing to a 3-year contract.
And somehow they still only, because I just saw a tweet from Will. He retweeted something from Zach Lowe from ESPN saying, just finished Grizz Pels. I regret nothing. Pelicans defense mostly black. Grizz fouling up 3 with 5 seconds left was weird.
This is Dunc and Holder on Sports 1280, New Orleans.
Welcome back, Dunc and Holder. Thursday, January 11th, breaking down the Saints' big divisional playoff game against the Vikings. And one of the factors that I think is going to come into play in this game, something of an ancillary, intangible factor, and that is the noise that occurs in the U.S. Bank Stadium. I mean, this is an enclosed environment. It's one of the loudest, most hostile venues in the league. We talked to a lot of Saints players in the locker room yesterday, and I mentioned this on the program earlier in the week. The Saints have done really well with the crowd noise for the most part this year. They have only had 6 false start penalties, the lowest by far in the NFL. And I was asking some of the players about it, why have they been so low? Are they just incredibly focused or what? And they actually said, they kind of let me in on a little secret, I think, that they use the exact same cadence over and over. So it gives them, familiarity with exactly what Drew is getting ready to call. And it's led to them having few false starts. Matter of fact, one of the false starts, as Larry pointed out, was Brandon Coleman at receiver, wasn't even an offensive lineman. So that'll come in handy for them on Sunday because they don't want to be in these 1st and 15s. That's like a recipe for disaster against this team.
Yeah, you might as well get Morstead ready.
Right.
But this is going to be the exact opposite of what they had this past week. They could just take the crowd noise and bottle it up from Sunday and use it against them this week because it's going to be, it's obviously in Minnesota, this new stadium that they're playing in obviously has become a huge advantage for them. And it's much like the Superdome. I don't know if it's going to be as loud as the Superdome because I was there. I was actually got to go as a fan for the. I mean, I don't get to do that very often because I'm generally working most of the time. But my wife got some tickets from her work, and we went, and I enjoyed the game as a fan for a change. Got to sat up with the terrace peeps, and man, it was
the denizens.
It was super loud, and
it was loud. It was electric.
It was fun. It was a lot of fun.
It's as loud as I've heard it in a while. The last few games, the Falcons game and this game, definitely it's carrying the Saints, especially on these big third downs with the defense. But that inherent advantage you get, we talked to the offensive lineman about that. I mean, the Vikings are going to have it now, and that is on the snap count. They're going to be able to get that extra split second because the offensive line has to kind of wait that split second to make sure they don't jump, and it creates some problems in protection.
And this is an aside, just really, because, I mean, I've heard you talk about it, and I'm sure, you talked about how Doug Thornton, because it's an SMG property, he was involved in, a lot of the planning stages. I'm intrigued to know, and this is a complete aside, how, when you're going into making a building that big, how do you make it to where it's like a home, like how you make it different from every other venue across the country, but also make it yours, and then also make it loud in a different way that's uniquely yours.
There you go, Dunc. You need to get an architect on the show.
Yeah, architecturally speaking.
We'd get Doug on here, but he would talk about it for like an hour.
Sports talk, man.
He would go into such great detail that we'd all fall asleep because I love Doug, but man, he'll show you every exhibit in the museum when you get him on. All right, quick break, and we're going to come back with Fletcher Mackel of WDSU. Further talk about this Saints-Vikings matchup right here on Sports 1280, NOLA.com, the iHeartRadio app. We are Dunc and Holder.
Your forecast on Sports 1280.
In the rain. You guys would love
Happy Thursday
Light Rock
from the Fox
Express.
8 Weather Center. I'm meteorologist Shelby
That's what they
Latino.
play.
Some showers
Frankie
around
Valley is the
today,
man.
as well as mostly cloudy
They
skies.
play songs like that. There's a
Temperatures
band in town
climbing
called
into the
Yacht Rock
70s,
that-
though.
Oh,
Enjoy it
Wear
while we
Yacht.
have it
They're
because
called
a
Wear
strong
Yacht.
cold
Shut
front
up.
moves
Really?
through
They
tonight
play.
that could
It's a
spark up
Sirius
few more
XM
showers
channel
and
for
storms.
Yacht.
Yes, absolutely.
I got it on my
channel.
I
Yes.
got it on
Right now as we
my
head into
Pandora.
tomorrow
Yes.
and colder,
In fact, we listen
windier
to it out in the
winds.
Bureau all the time.
We'll
Is
see
better.
temperatures in the
And the reason I
40s
know
all
this
day
is 'cause
long
I've seen it
tomorrow
once,
and
but
feeling
Cooper
even
Manning
colder
is a
because of that
huge,
wind.
huge
From the
yacht
Fox
rock
8 Weather
fan,
Center,
like he
I'm
loves it.
meteorologist Shelby
And so
Latino.
we talk all the
so
time
much.
about
Shay.
he's
What a
gone
great
to
deal
see
for under $5
Light Rock
because
Express,
Subway
which is
restaurants
my
have
favorite band of all time.
That's
They play
one of 5
Kingpin,
6-inch
but they're from
subs with
Houston.
chips
Yacht
and a
Rock
21
Express?
ounce
No,
fountain
Light
for
Rock.
Light
$4.99.
Rock
So they play like
Express.
Light Rock. It's the same
Limited
term,
time
Light
only.
Rock, Yacht Rock.
All right, we got Fletcher.
All right,
For
bud.
extras.
And minute and a half.
But these guys in Light Rock
of Americans
are
will give up on their
musicians
New
in
Year's
other bands,
resolutions
and this
by
is like their
February. But there's
side
one
band.
thing Americans never
And
give up.
they're
AM,
great
FM
musicians.
radio.
I mean, they're
I'd love
really
to see
good.
that.
When you hear them,
reaches 86% of
they
Americans.
knock it out of
Radio
the park. And
commercials
every
just like
time you
this one
go
will reach 93% of Americans in every single
everybody's
week.
singing
Really?
lyrics. It's,
So if you
Let
want
me
to
know
reach
the
more
next time they
moms,
go.
will.
bands,
Trust me,
businesses,
I'd like to go see
it's a
that.
blast.
And well, more
I ended
pretty
up on
much
the
everyone. Radio is
bar
the way to
last
do
time,
it.
standing on the
Make a
bar.
resolution
I
to go
like
to iHeartMedia.com
Frankie Valley so
and
much.
put
Actually,
radio to work for
took
your
my
company
wife
in
to the Sanger to
2018.
see Jersey Boys.
Shop
Yeah.
lows and save
I bet
big
it was
this
great.
week
It
with
was
great deals to
fantastic.
update your bath
I
or
didn't
get
think I would like that
organized
kind of
throughout
thing,
your
but
home.
No, no.
Now
I
get
bet
up
it
to
was a blast. I bet it was
25% off
packed,
select
too.
bath
It
faucets
was,
and
and I've
make
been
your
actually been
bath
a couple
shine.
other shows.
Those
And
shows
if your
are
New Year's
great. I tried
resolution
to
is to get
They're
organized,
expensive.
Lowe's
Yeah,
can
no,
help
but it's still
and help you
great
save.
entertainment.
With 18-gallon totes
I
starting
mean, I
at
didn't think I would like that
$3.98.
kind of thing,
All
but I
projects
brought
at
my
the
wife.
starting point.
Man, I love
Starts
it.
with Lowe's.
I think those
Faucet offer
people are
valid
like
through January
incredibly
17th.
talented.
Tote offer
Every
valid.
night they got to do it
it's
live
amazing.
Supplies
and
last.
bring
See
it.
store for details.
And I mean, I know when we do
If
a
you're a
bunch of
small
games in a
business,
row, and
first impressions can make all the
prep
difference.
games, by
With
like the
Grasshopper,
third game,
you
I
get all
can't
the
speak,
features
so
of
I
a
can't
professional
imagine
business phone
singing that
system
every
on your
night.
mobile
What?
phone.
Like
Choose
that.
a business phone.
Saying
number.
what, big girls don't cry?
I think what I'll do with Fletcher real quick is let him get the Pelicans out of his
Use
system.
our desktop app.
Then we'll
Set up
move
your
on.
account
So,
in minutes with
You
no
know,
long-term contracts.
10 seconds.
All right, bud.
Customer
Wanda's
support.
crank.
Make your small business big. Now get $20 off your first month when you visit grasshopper.com/radio. That's grasshopper.com/radio.
Your home for home team talk. Sports 1280 New Orleans.
Duncan Holder back at you on Thursday, and we've got Fletcher Mackel, one of our favorite people in the local New Orleans sports scene, media scene, just in general. One of my favorite people in town, a true New Orleanian, knows the city up and down, knows the food scene, so we can relate on that. Fletcher, I've got to let you get this out of your system. Before we get into the Saints-Vikings talk, what did you think of that Pelicans game last night?
It was ridiculously embarrassing. I mean, look, right now, Alvin Gentry and Dell Demps have to be the biggest Saints fans in the world because as long as the Saints are winning, the Benson's football team is number one and they're on the back burner, but they are on borrowed time. 20-20 in an embarrassing loss to the lowly Grizz, who have basically quit, was a disaster, and it's been a disaster all season. So it was ugly.
They were only 2-point dogs, Fletch.
The Pelicans?
No, I mean they were 2-point they were only 2-point favorites, so they only came 5 points away from covering.
I understand, and Anthony Davis didn't play, and I know there's a lot of excuse making that goes on, but you're a so-called playoff team that's got a lot to play for, a sense of urgency, and this is a Grizzlies team without their best player, Mike Conley, with Gasol on the trade block that's completely unengaged, in a team that's playing a bunch of cast-offs and young players with an interim coach. It just shouldn't be like it was last night. They scored 9 points in the third quarter.
Yeah.
I mean, it was pretty unwatchable.
Got out rebounded by 10, and they're not a great rebounding team obviously without AD. But part of the problem when you use DeMarcus Cousins the way they use him, bringing him out and letting him become a modern day Steve Kerr, which is what I think he is, thinks he is. There's no one underneath the offensive rebound at all. I mean, there's no size at all involved, so you're taking your one big man out. And the last play call, Fletcher, to Cousins, letting him try and break down the defense was going nowhere. You could see that.
He almost walked.
Look, here's the thing. DeMarcus Cousins is going to get Alvin Gentry fired. I don't think, for all the people who want to hate Alvin Gentry, that they came out of a timeout with 20 seconds left down by 1, and he just said, you know what, Boogie, go play hero ball. Just dribble it out and make something happen. But that's what happened. Cousins, who had a lot of three-pointers in that game, got the ball, dribbled it out, and then turned it over. But that certainly wasn't the play coming out of a timeout down by 1 with 20 seconds. So he's a great player, but we're learning what Sacramento learned. He's pretty uncoachable.
LSU was a lot more fun to watch, Fletch.
I wish I would have watched it instead.
Very good.
All right, let's switch gears. Saints-Vikings, you were in the locker room yesterday. What's your take on this game, Fletcher? To me, it's really a 50-50 coin toss in this game. I think the Saints have a better shot at winning this than maybe a lot of people outside of New Orleans think. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think that the Saints are poised for a big upset here. The one thing that concerns me, because we all talk about the optics of how different these teams look. You know, Adrian Peterson was a starter in Week 1. Sam Bradford was a starter in Week 1. Both of these teams have evolved and grown and become special. But the one thing that hasn't changed is that Vikings defense was awesome in Week 1, and they are still pretty awesome right now. So that's a huge concern for me. Also, the Saints' lack of depth. You know, I think missing A.J. Klein and in all the starters they've lost, the Okafors, the Vaccaros, everyone, even going back to Fairley, I think it's finally starting to rear its ugly head, so to say. So it's a concern. But there's something about that Saints locker room, Jeff. I know you were in there yesterday. It just feels special. It feels different than 2013. It even feels a little bit different than 2011. So I think the Saints have a tremendous opportunity to go up as a complete team and beat a Minnesota team that is good, but I certainly don't think you look at them as this great juggernaut, unstoppable force, so to say.
Fletch, Jim Derry here. Talk about a little bit about Ken Crawley was sort of exposed a little bit last week, and how much better he's going to have to play. If Lattimore is on Stephon Diggs, then that puts Crawley on Adam Thielen, and just talk about how important it's going to be for him to play a better game than he played last week.
Yeah, I mean, look, here's the thing. The last two games are concerning for the Saints. That Tampa game was certainly ugly at the end, and Jameis Winston made plays. And then the end of the Carolina game, the Saints can't let that happen in Minnesota, or they're going to, they need a Herculean effort out of Drew Brees, a 4 or 5 touchdown effort, if their defense plays like it did in the past two games. So it's a huge concern. And that is one of the things that, as I alluded to in the first answer, because of the lack of depth that the Saints have now, because of all the injuries they sustained, Dennis Allen's done a great job, but there's only so many Band-Aids he can put on gunshot wounds in ways he can mask, lack of depth or deficiencies on his defense. And again, great job that he's done this season, but it could come back to bite them because you look at the weapons that Minnesota has and how they deploy their offense. And it certainly looks like it could create some matchup problems. But here's the thing. The Saints create matchup problems. The Carolina Panthers did an excellent job of taking away Ingram and Kamara, but you couldn't stop Drew Brees. They kind of, went all in on stopping the run, and then Brees has maybe his finest game of the season. Minnesota's the same way. You can take away certain weapons, but they can still beat you in other ways. So I'm excited about this team. I think it's going to be one of the most intriguing games in recent Saints history to me, and I can't wait to see how it unfolds.
Hey, Fletch, that kind of goes into a question that I have specifically. Is the first thing that people talked about on Monday was, man, Drew Brees is so great. Drew Brees is one of the greatest quarterbacks in the NFL. Drew Brees is going to be one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. It's strange that we feel like, I think Drew Brees goes into a season or goes into the playoffs underrated as a player. But is there any reason why you think that for outside of the Ingram and Kamara dominance of the entire year, and we talk about Michael Thomas, is it strange that we're kind of talking about Drew Brees in these hushed tones of, man, if he has to have a great game, he has to have a great game, but everybody was just kind of so blown away, like they almost forgot about him, which seems like it'd be a crazy thing to do.
It does seem like a crazy thing to do, and let me say this. That's one of the things that I think makes the NFC playoffs far more relevant than the AFC, because we know the Patriots or the Steelers are probably going to advance to the Super Bowl. They're kind of the it team, so to say. I don't think anybody thinks Jacksonville's making it to Super Bowl 52. Whereas in the NFC, because of the X factor that is Drew Brees, everybody kind of became enamored with the shiny new toys. Ingram and Kamara and the Saints' resurgence on defense, and that became the big storylines this year, and deservingly so. But I don't want to say he was forgotten about or pushed to the back burner, but for the first time in his tenure here, it wasn't, hey, Drew, put everybody on your shoulders and carry us to the promised land. And so now the storyline has become more of Drew Brees and, producing big games and coming through in the clutch. And, to me, that's what makes the Saints truly a Super Bowl team in the NFC, because, you look at the depth they have and you have the most polished, experienced quarterback. But it is a little bit of a surprise that so many people nationally are talking about, don't forget about Drew Brees, is if he went away, he reset the NFL record for completion percentage this year. So it's not like he's gone anywhere. He's been as efficient as ever. They just have the most complete team they ever have had around him.
But don't you think, Fletcher, that this is a huge opportunity for Drew Brees? Now, he'll never admit it. We were there talking to him yesterday, and, he's the robot focused on the game plan for the Vikings. He doesn't want to talk about legacy or anything like that. But this is huge for his legacy. He has a chance to get to another Super Bowl, maybe win a second Super Bowl, and that puts him in a rare club of exclusive club that's won multiple Super Bowls. It puts him up there with Peyton Manning and Tom Brady and those guys that have won multiple Super Bowls, because right now he's got the one on his resume.
Without question, and I know you asked him a lot of questions about that, and I think that it was a great line of questioning that we're all interested in, the sense of urgency for a soon-to-be 39-year-old quarterback, realizing that these opportunities don't come around to have a team this balanced or this good and make a true Super Bowl run. So you're right. He is, name, rank, and serial number. He obviously, a lot of the lines yesterday where I prepare for every game the same. But these games aren't the same, and he did I thought it was his boyish optimism yesterday and his youthful enthusiasm that when he kind of broke away from all those cliche answers, he started talking about, this is free football. I'd do this for free. I'd give all the money during the regular season back to get to this opportunity. And I think that's where you saw how much it truly means to him. And he is relishing this opportunity, knowing that it's hard to get here and it's hard to have a team this good. So I think in his heart of hearts, he knows this is a tremendous opportunity, and I wouldn't be surprised if we heard something about a big speech on the plane or in the hotel or pregame from Drew Brees if they win this game that got everybody amped up and focused, and it drove them to a victory on Sunday.
All right, Fletch, nut cutting time, as they say. I want your.
Can you say that on the air?
Yes. Can we get a prediction out? Have you made a prediction yet? Can you go public? What's your thoughts?
Okay, let me say that. For all the good I've just said about the Saints, I'm picking the Vikings in this game. They're in a very
what?
Yeah, I am.
He's a realist.
For everything that I've just said, I am going to do a total 180 and crawfish like crazy. I think the Saints can win this game. Is a born and raised New Orleanian, like Jeff said, I hope the Saints win this game, and I think the Saints are capable of winning this game. But I'm going Minnesota 28-24 because I think that they're an underrated team that people aren't giving enough credit to.
Let's tell everybody about what I know you're going to be getting up there probably soon. Tell everybody about what your coverage, when's it going to start from up in Minneapolis.
Yeah. I appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity. Jim Mora will be joining us, so hopefully there'll be no cursing on air this time like there was last time when we were in Minnesota for the season opener. But, yes, Jim Mora will be with us, and we'll have coverage starting this weekend with analysis from Jim Mora on every platform that WDSU has. So please check us out, and thanks for having me.
One thing real quick, Fletch. What is Jim Mora like when you're at commercial break and, you know, him and Sharif don't seem to be buddy-buddy?
Let me say this, just real quick. We all get along great, and he really is, you know, I didn't know him. I was in high school and college, so I didn't cover him as a working member of the media. I was just growing up here. But I always tell people he's like Robert De Niro. You know, De Niro was the serious actor who was like intense Taxi Driver, Goodfellas, and then he became kind of a comedic gem that we didn't realize. To me, Jim Mora has become quite the comedic gem because everything to him is funny, and he's so laid back now that he's in his 80s and doesn't have to coach and deal with the stress. And some of the stuff with Sharif is a little bit of an act because Sharif will tell him, Jim,
it's awesome TV.
He goes, I'm going to get you here. And so Jim kind of rolls his eyes. So I think it makes for good TV. And Sharif knows I can prod him to a place that, you know, an opinion that I have that he doesn't agree with that can push him in a certain direction. And then I have to kind of play ringmaster to make sure that there are no expletives and or pounding of the desk once that happens.
Well, Sharif is a fellow Shaw grad, so us West Bankers, we know how to push buttons.
There you go, Jeff.
Hey, thanks a lot, Fletcher. We'll look forward to watching your coverage up in Minneapolis.
Safe travels, too.
Watching Jim Moore and you and Sharif and everything. Thanks for coming on the program,
Fletch.
buddy.
No, thank you all for having me. I appreciate it.
That's Fletcher Mackel, WDSU sports director, New Orleanian extraordinaire. I can't believe he picked the Vikings to win.
Dunc, seriously. I mean, I really enjoy their post-game coverage, whether the Saints win or lose, because you really can tell Sharif is
such a, like, he's
pressing
that knife
coach's
turner.
buttons.
And I mean, he already got him to curse on air once, even though that was Scott Walker's fault. But I mean, already got him to curse on air once. He's full of blank.
That was truly legendary, classic
Jim
TV.
Mora.
All right, we'll be back. We're going to take another break. We'll come back and talk to Kevin Seifert of ESPN, get his thoughts from Minneapolis on this big Saints-Vikings matchup. You're listening to Sports 1280, NOLA.com, the iHeartRadio app. We are Dunc and Holder.
Cold, freezing money in your hot little hand.
Many times
you could win $1,000 in your hand. Be listening
like, dude,
every hour.
I know.
He's a good
And then I'll tell him,
dude.
and then he'll forget about it a minute later. It'll
Hi,
fade
I'm
back
Lieutenant
out.
Governor Billy Nunn.
Let me tell me some big thing like you won't believe what I heard at Saints camp. Peyton Sewell, and then it'll fade out. Don't hear anything the key party said.
It's like you'll never believe this, but
as we invite you to do the same,
it's unbelievable.
every corner of Louisiana has something to offer. From the world-class fishing at Toledo Bend to
So there's been 1, 2, 3,
to exploring
4,
the
5, 6,
ancient
7,
mounds
8,
of Poverty
10,
Point,
11,
World
only 12
Heritage
quarterbacks have
So
won
fill up your car
multiple
and
Super Bowls.
staycation right here in our home,
So the
Louisiana.
Breeze needs to get in that.
Shop
mix,
Lowe's
I think,
and
to
take
be
advantage of
considered
great savings to make updates
Brady,
indoors. Add new
Big
color to
Ben,
your walls
Peyton.
with paint and
I don't
primer
think
and
he'll
wood,
ever-
now
This might
starting
be
at
his last
$18.98. And if you've
Yeah,
been
well, I mean,
craving new
next year they should be
appliances,
pretty
get
damn
up
good.
to 25%
Yeah,
off
all their
appliance
cores,
special
man.
value.
You can't say
Hey,
they're
we got
not going to
Kevin.
be.
All right, thanks, bud.
All projects have a starting point. Start with Lowe's.
You got me?
NDA
Yeah,
price
yeah, I
applies
heard
to
you. Thanks, buddy.
Olympic Assure paints, U.S. only. Appliance offer valid through January 24th. Exclusions apply. See store for.
You heard me?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Full, healthy world happens
missed
one
it,
person at a
You got Kevin.
time. There are children.
Beautiful.
who
That was
dream
me
of helping
saying I
their
didn't.
families.
I had
who
my
hope for the
headphones
future.
off.
Bueller.
At unbound.org.
Facebook is trying to serve you up some
The
local
YouTube crowd
news.
has gotten
Social
better.
network is testing
yeah.
new section
No, it's
inside its app called
over the
Today
course of the
In,
last
a
few
feed
weeks,
made up
like
entirely of
especially on
local
Mondays
news,
after
events,
games,
and announcements.
it'll be at
Facebook is using a mix of
120,
humans
but then even
and
days
machine
like
learning
this,
software
it's-
to surface
Well, it
the
might be
content for the
120
new
if I wasn't
section.
on it.
Facebook
Yeah,
says
true,
the
too,
service
yeah.
is part of their
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That's no
initiative,
question.
which
But no,
aims to
constantly,
fight
like, it's
fake
been
news.
growing to where,
Soul
like,
Electronics
every
day
out
we
with
get,
some
like,
ear
65,
headphones
70 that are
claim they
watching
can
continuously.
correct your running
Compared to,
form.
like, the
Headphone
30 that we
sensors
had
track
3
different
months ago.
parameters
Yeah.
like cadence, stance, shock, and balance. And if any of these fall outside an optimal range, the app's digital trainer will tell you in the headphones what to adjust in order for you to correct your form. Looking to find your art doppelganger?
Val.
Google can help with that. The Google Arts and Culture app prompts you to take a selfie or a
and I tell
photo
you
of
right
a
now,
friend,
like they are hot.
upload it
They are
to
hot over the
technology.
Pelicans right
10
now.
seconds.
Like they are
Instantly find people
angry.
who look like you in historical artwork via its 1,000 partner museums. Tech Report, Larry Olson, NBC News Radio.
Uptown got its hustlers. The Bowery got its bumps.
This is Dunc and Holder on Sports 1280 New Orleans.
Welcome back, Dunc and Holder, Thursday, January 11th. Let's go up to Minneapolis, the great North Country, as they call it, and talk to Kevin Seifert. Kevin's a national reporter for NFL Nation at ESPN and covered the Vikings for a long time up in the Minneapolis market. Kevin, what is the temperature up there today? I thought I saw it was like single digits. Am I reading that wrong? Please tell me I'm reading it wrong.
No, sir. I'm looking out the window right now. The snow is going sideways, and temperatures have plunged into single digits with wind chill way below zero. So I would bring all your coats up here this weekend.
That is just the most depressing news I've ever heard.
I was upset because it's supposed to be high tomorrow. It's like 42, and the low's like 26, and that's upsetting.
In New Orleans?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's supposed to be in the 40s and 50s all week. No, it's.
Well, thank God U.S. Bank Stadium is enclosed. I think we can all agree on that. We don't want to be outdoors in this environment. So, Kevin, I want to get your thoughts on this game. This is obviously a very intriguing matchup. We've been talking about it for the first 45 minutes. What's your take on Case Keenum? Do we know how he's going to react in this game, or is it unfair to even judge him as an inexperienced quarterback because of what he's done this season so far in leading the Vikings to this point?
Yeah, it's been really interesting to watch because most of us assumed that Case Keenum was holding the spot down until Teddy Bridgewater was ready to play. We didn't know at the beginning of the season whether Teddy would be ready, but it became evident around midseason or so that he would. Even after the Sam Bradford injury, Teddy is very close with a lot of people in the organization. Mike Zimmer loves him like a son, was crying the day that he injured his knee, and so they had every trust in the world in him and full expectation, I think, that he would become the starter at some point in the second half of the season. And Case Keenum has not given them a reason to bench him. And I think everyone thought there would be one of those games where he just like threw 5 interceptions, or he fumbled 4 times, or he did something that just like brought the whole thing crashing down, and he never did it. And so all it had to have was one of those type games, and he would have lost his job, and it just has never happened. And so while it's fair to go into the playoffs and say he's never been in this situation before, he's never been in a playoff start and going against the Saints team that was, at least with Drew Brees and some of the other players on the roster, have a lot of playoff experience. Fair to consider him an underdog, but every time we've assumed that he's about to hit that wall and become the previous version of Case Keenum, it hasn't happened. And so there's at least some reason to think that he, in combination with Pat Shurmur and the offensive personnel they have here, has found a pretty high level of play that he can sustain at least as long as he's here.
Kevin, Jim Derry here. Just talk a little bit about the rapport that he's built with those receivers as well, and both Diggs and Thielen having a very good season, and really he seemed to lean a lot on Kyle Rudolph the last half of the season, and just how has he been able to build that rapport in such a short time?
Well, the interesting thing about him is when you go way even back to his time at Houston. In college at Houston, and then in the NFL with Houston and the Rams even, he's always been a pretty aggressive downfield passer. It's gotten him in trouble sometimes with interceptions and other errant plays, but he's always had that mentality to push the ball downfield and not necessarily take the checkdowns. And so the rapport with Thielen and Diggs is that those guys are really good route runners. They're going to be open. You just have to, they may not be open by 5 yards. They may not be streaking past defenders with their speed, even though they're both pretty fast. but they're going to be open, and they're very reliable if you get them the ball, and you just have to have that mentality that not all quarterbacks have. And, in fact, it was a knock on Teddy Bridgewater here before he got hurt that you have to have a little, throw caution to the wind a little bit to have the faith that these guys will catch it and get first downs and score touchdowns, even if the defender's with them. Even if they're covered. And that especially is true for Kyle Rudolph. He's never been a guy who could run away from anybody, but he's so tall and has such long arms that if you throw it anywhere in his radius, he'll outfight most defenders for the ball. But you have to have that mentality, and I think that's been the key to Case's success is he has that willingness to push the ball downfield, not even in situations where it's not the obvious read. And that has generated confidence from his receivers, and they've paid it off by making those plays. And so, really, and more than anything, it's his aggressive mentality that I think has played a big part in that.
Kevin, switching gears a little bit now to the other side of the ball in the defense, one guy specifically that I've been thinking about going into this matchup again that I think people, when he came out from LSU, is Danielle Hunter. But then you also talk about, Everson Griffin and obviously Xavier Rhodes. Can you talk a little bit about Minnesota's strategy over the course of the last couple of years on trying to bolster that defense and then picking up guys like Danielle Hunter, guys that, maybe project well, but like some teams probably whiffed on. And now they're thinking, man, if we could have had that guy, he probably would have turned our defense around.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing the Danielle Hunter thing. Was it 1.5 sacks his last year at LSU, and he's now got 20 sacks in the past 2 years. And when Mike Zimmer got here in 2014, one of the advantages of being a coach who hasn't gotten a head coaching job for 35 years is that when you finally get one, you know what you want. And he'd been a great defensive coordinator in the league for a long time and knew the exact type of profile player that he wanted. There was a couple already here. The Vikings had already drafted Harrison Smith to safety and Xavier Rhodes to cornerback. But he likes really tall. He likes tall cornerbacks that can cover in man-to-man. He likes versatile safeties. He likes long defensive ends, which Danielle Hunter very much qualified for as from a physical standpoint. He's 6'5" and like almost 35-inch arms, and so had that physical stature that he likes. And then he likes really fast linebackers, and so they drafted Anthony Barr and Eric Kendricks. But you take Danielle Hunter and put him in a scheme that is gonna really maximize his chances to use that late pass single blocking, because there's not going to be a lot of double teams. You got Everson Griffin, who's not necessarily the profile of athletic profile Zimmer would be looking for, but has such a motor that he overcomes, being a little stouter than you usually see for a guy who's successful on the edge. And then you've got these two tall cornerbacks, Trey Waynes and Xavier Rhodes, that they basically trust in man coverage. And when you have cornerbacks that you really don't have to help out a lot, you can use your safeties for other things. And they use Harrison Smith all over the field. Sometimes he'll be in center field coverage, but a lot of times he'll be up close. He's really good against the run. And he also is pretty instinctive in the blitz. And so when they don't have to use him that much for double teams, because they trust those corners, they can do all kinds of different exotic blitzes and that sort of thing. So that kind of is the way they've built that defense. A little bit with what was here when Zimmer got here, but a lot with what he sort of made his request to Rick Spielman, the general manager, since he got here.
Hey, Kevin, let's talking to Kevin Seifert of ESPN's NFL Nation about the Saints-Vikings game. Kevin, I want to go off the field a little bit. You've been in Minneapolis for a long time, and you can probably answer this question as well as anybody. Saints fans have always been long-suffering before they won that Super Bowl, at least in 2009, kind of relieved their burden.
Yeah.
But Minnesota fans, my goodness, 0-4 in the Super Bowl, have lost two heartbreaking overtime NFC championship games, one of them, of course, to the Saints here in 2009. Can you characterize, how much anxiety there is in the fan base, or is it more a state of confidence and euphoria because they have this great opportunity to get to the Super Bowl in 2 weeks?
Yeah, much more the former. I think they're really excited because they know football here, and they've watched the team, and they know it's a really well-rounded, healthy team where all the things are going in the right direction, and that's what scares them the most, because there's been – you think back to that 98 team when they had Randy Moss and Chris Carter and Randall Cunningham, and they were scoring 40 points a game, and there was no stopping them. And Gary Anderson hasn't missed a field goal in the entire season, and then misses one, and they go to overtime and lose to the Falcons. And there have been so many postseason endings like that. It's not just that game. The Seahawks, 2 years ago, they had the Seahawks up here. Blair Walsh had a 27-yard field goal to win it, and he shanked it, and they lost. If you go way back, the original Hail Mary, the Drew Pearson, the Vikings fans will go to their grave saying that Pearson, pushed off, and he's known as Push Pearson up here as a result when they lost to the Cowboys in the playoffs one year. And so there's this completely legitimate arc of history of just bizarre endings. And then even the Saints game, the NFC Championship game with the Saints, with the 12 men on the field and Brett Favre throwing an interception. There's always, you could take a handful of plays in the Vikings history and say if they went the other way around, they would have at least ended up in Super Bowls, if not winning Super Bowls. And so there's a high degree, I think, of I don't know if to say anxiety, but paralysis. Nobody is getting nervous, but nobody is allowed.
2 minutes. 2 minutes.
I'm interested to see what the crowd is like, because there's definitely anybody with a sense of history with this franchise knows how crazy things can be and how easily they can go wrong. They're hoping it's not going to be the case this go-around, but they have seen it many times before.
Yeah, I'll tell Saints fans all the time, look, I know you suffered through the John Meekum years, but just think about that history. 0-4 in the Super Bowl, lose 2 overtime NFC Championship games on kicks, and you got to live up in single-digit weather.
1 in 15.
At least it's warm down here.
1 in 15, buddy.
Yeah.
I know.
The people here have to wake up in Minnesota after those losses as well.
All right, Kevin. Kevin Seifert from ESPN and ESPN's NFL Nation. Thanks for joining the program, Kevin. I'll see you up in the press box on Sunday, buddy.
Sounds good. Good talking to you guys.
All right, that's Kevin Seifert, ESPN, and Kevin's been around for a long time, covered the league for a long time. He and I actually went on one of those tours in Maui, the Mount Haleakala bike tour. We went on the tour. You have to rise at like 2:30 in the morning and then take the bike. You see the sunrise above the clouds.
Above the clouds, yes.
And then you take the bike ride down. Kevin and I did that mission or adventure and bonded over that.
You got a tough life, Tom.
That was just that was one of the great boondoggles
30 seconds?
of my journalism career, getting to go to Maui to the NFL owners meetings.
You get to go to Europe, Hawaii.
Oh, yeah.
Where this job is taking you.
Not a bad gig. All right, Hour 1 in the books. Hour 2 right around the corner.
Stadium.
And we will talk to John Reed and Pete Prisco at the top of the hour. You're listening to Sports 1280, NOLA.com, the iHeartRadio app. We are Dunc and Holder.
Dilly dilly.
Very nice. Very nice. That was a good way to get it in. That's good to get it in.
And to make your family comfortable. So if you ever have a problem, you want someone who will be there to help right away.
Yeah, that was
At
like the
Burkhardt Air
greatest
Conditioning and
boondoggle ever,
Heating,
man.
that's the commitment we've
not only
made
was
to
I
our
in
customers
Maui,
for over 25
I was in the
years.
Ritz-Carlton in Maui.
I know where that is. I know where you are.
Kapalua, man.
Oh, yeah, Kapalua.
That's where the PGA tournament is.
Oh, yeah.
If you need help,
Yeah, it was
last weekend.
Call us.
Yeah.
We promise to get you up and running again quickly and
I
professionally.
thought they opened it up.
And if you're thinking about an upgrade
thought they
right
opened it
now,
up. I
we'll
thought
help you
it
save with quality cooling equipment from Amana. These
that was
systems
like
come with
great. Although I do
incredible
remember
warranties.
Better
And
do that
many
than the road to
years
Honda.
interest-free
I remember getting
financing available
can
now.
of Diet Coke
Plus,
out
our
of the
Amana brand
mini
HVAC
fridge in my
systems
room,
are highly
and it was
efficient.
$10.
With Burkhardt's 25% energy
One
reduction
can.
guarantee, you'll continue saving on utility bills for years to come. Whether it's an emergency repair or a brand new cooling system, we're here to help when you need us. Trust Burkhardt Air Conditioning and Heating. Visit
I can't believe you're still on the bridge. I figured, I mean, it was stacked up bad.
WODT WNOE FM HD2 New Orleans. Listen on the free iHeartRadio app. Search Sports 1280. Fox Sports trending now.
Just 2 days after introducing new head coach Matt Nagy, the Chicago Bears have reportedly hired former Oregon head coach Mark Helfrich as their new offensive coordinator. Titans will be without running back DeMarco Murray for Saturday's AFC divisional round game against the Patriots at Foxborough because of his knee injury. And the NFL announced its 3 London games for 2018. Raiders will face the Seahawks October 14th at the new stadium home of the Tottenham Hotspur Soccer Club. The other 2 games will be played at Wembley Stadium. They'll feature the Eagles taking on the Jaguars and a Chargers-Titans matchup. NBA, by the way, is in London today. It's a 3 Eastern tip-off from O2 Arena. The 33-10 Celtics taking on the 19-19 Sixers. Baseball news, free agent outfielder Jay Bruce has reportedly agreed to a 3-year, $39 million deal to return to the Mets. I'm Deb Carson.
Message and data rates may apply. Oh my gosh, that's Frank Thomas.
All right, 4.5 minutes.
Yes, that's him. Go ahead. Excuse me, are you Frank Thomas?
Yes, I am.
I bet you get recognized a lot.
I was a pretty good ball player.
You were?
Some people thought so.
Sorry, we recognize you from those Nugenix commercials.
Oh, yeah? That's great.
So does Nugenix really work?
Oh, yeah. I really can feel the difference. My workouts are better, and I feel a lot more energetic.
I wish my husband would use Nugenix.
It's so easy to get started. All you have to do is send one simple text.
Text the word GRIT to 42424 for a complimentary bottle of award-winning Nugenix, the #1 selling free testosterone booster at GNC. Its unique man-boosting formula is powered by Testofen, a patented key ingredient clinically researched to help a man feel stronger, leaner, more energetic, and more passionate.
Really good interviews,
and you're going to like the difference, too.
Text GRIT to 42424 for a complimentary bottle of Nugenix. Samples are not available in stores.
I didn't know he was a UVA
Text GRIT to 42424.
For over 80 years, in the heart of Mid-City, where it's always been, is a New Orleans tradition, Mandina's Restaurant.
Oh, wow.
Come in for some New Orleans staples, old-style New Orleans food, atmosphere,
all you do is ride
and
down.
some of the best seafood in the city.
You're just on your break.
Always New
You don't
Orleans,
have to pedal.
always the best,
Yeah.
always
There's like some
Mandina's.
vineyard halfway down. There's like some
This
vineyard
week
you
on
stop
Big
in
Easy
for
Deals,
wine.
get a
It's
family
like really
4-pack
awesome.
to the Audubon Aquarium of the Americas. At the
30.
aquarium, penguins,
in the morning.
stingrays, sharks,
And
and other
then
deep-sea
between
creatures
that one
await
and
your
then
visit.
there's one
Get
that you
your
can
family
do
4-pack
in
for only
Honolulu
$48 at
that you have
Fox
to
Sports AM
actually,
1280.com.
you have
Keyword
to
deals.
get tickets for in advance.
What's that sound?
To see the sun come up.
That's the sound of you having
it's
your
not
next
Diamond
party
Head.
at
It's either over
Oceana
Diamond
Grill.
Head or something
Birthday
close to that
parties,
on
rehearsals,
the
weddings,
island.
That's right.
corporate
I
dinners.
know that one you're
No
talking about.
party is too small or
And
too
then like
large
you
for
can
did it
drive
once,
up
I'm
it,
not doing it
Come
again.
but like,
visit any of our
but like
four
you like
private
only
dining
so many
rooms
cars
or our
can go
huge
up
corporate
every
venue
day
next to
Yeah.
to see the sun
Have your
come
own
up.
venue?
And
Then
then you
we'll
have to
bring the
drive back down
delicacies
the-
to you.
I remember the
Oceana
other
Grill,
thing that stood out to me,
739
you get like this little
contract is the
tour
best
as you
time
go
off
up, because you
purpose.
go up on like a bus with all the bikes, and they give you a tour, and you get up above the tree line.
Continue to advance
and
by increasing cure rates.
there's like
in
it's
childhood
like
cancer,
lunar
and
kind of
donors are
scape.
important
Yeah.
You get up really
to
high,
us
and there's
because
this one
you get the
plant.
feeling that you have
It's like this
a
little
team up.
shrub thing called like a
St.
silver
Jude
sword or
Children's
something
Research Hospital.
that grows.
That's why they're the silver swords.
Must be.
That would
It
make
grows-
sense.
It grows on that
Word, the
in
bigger
that
the
lunar
company, the
scape
better
thing. It's
the
the only
pay,
place like
but
in the
that
world.
century-old
It grows.
pattern is
I
eroding
don't know
and
how,
all
man. There's
but
like
gone
nothing.
for
There's no
low-wage
water
workers.
up there.
A
There's
Stanford
no
University study
there's
found
no
the pay
dirt.
premium
It's
has
just all
dropped
rocks.
from
Somehow
7%
it's like
in the
forged
1980s
out of.
to
I
only
can't even get my
20%
garden
today.
to grow.
When comparing salaries
Get my
between
garden to grow
more
in
than
the
100
North
employees and those with more than
Now I
10,000.
kinda want some Kona coffee.
And it was nearly 0%
Yeah.
for the lowest
We got a
paid
big
workers
trip
and
back
those
a bunch
without a
this summer.
college
We're heading
degree.
to,
The slide toward potential
my wife and a
liquidity
bunch of
is
her
immense.
friends are celebrating
Unlike most other
their
retailers,
40th
Sears
birthday
is
when I'm
reporting a
gonna be
lousy
50, so we're
holiday
going to
shopping season.
Punta Cana.
It's projecting a
Really?
Ooh,
That's gonna be awesome.
Have you ever been?
No, but
that is
no
about
people
half
have
of
been.
last year.
It's one of those.
Despite Attorney General Jeff
all-inclusive
Sessions'
Yeah.
threats against legal
resorts where you
marijuana,
just-
the green
we had
rush
a swim-up
continues in
room where you
California,
walk out
where
of your room,
recreational
step
marijuana
down into
sales
the pool,
began the
and
first
go
of the
order
year.
yourself a
Some
drink.
economically struggling
Dude.
small
So there'll
towns
be
are
4
hoping to
days
turn
of
their
just.
fortunes around with
I'll have
Never
another
leave
one
the
of
room,
those
man.
for- exactly.
Like,
why?
never leave the room. I just
There's
stay
all
in
kinds
the
of fun stuff.
Says
I'm like fun
cannabis
stuff to do
business
there. I'm
consultant
not going
Greta Carter.
anywhere.
A couple years ago, they were probably
Yeah, I wouldn't
purchased
either.
for
I'd be-
around
I'm gonna go into the pool,
60,000 an
have a
acre.
drink until I
60,000.
shrivel up like a prune, go take a nap,
You'd be lucky if you
unshrivel,
could
and then
find
go do
one
it again.
for 900,000 to $1 million.
But even while touring a recently approved project with clients, Carter acknowledges a harsh reality. It's hard to make it in the legal cannabis business.
You were saying a lot of people out here now are buying acres at $1 million a pop. They're not all going to
Yeah.
succeed.
That's true. Some of them won't get their doors open.
Exactly.
Other states show us 70% fail rate.
A 70% fail rate should strike
30 seconds.
anyone investing in pot. But like California's original gold rush, the prospect of getting rich on cannabis hasn't stopped.
Yeah, the
people
Sean
from trying,
Payton tree is
at
starting to
least
grow
not
now.
yet.
NBC's
Yeah, it
Jacob
is.
Soboroff
Speaking of the
reporting.
Jags.
And all snickering aside, the
Oh,
squatty
Doug Merle.
potty business is booming.
Not,
The
it's like a
Utah family
one-armed
that
tree in
invented
it.
It's like a one-armed tree.
One branch tree.
Just $35,000.
It's one of those that's going to take a lot longer. It's like a
Some of
bonsai.
the Saints Jags Super
2017,
Bowl.
and it's predicting $100 million in the next
No
few
one will
years.
watch it.
Consumer and business news. Joe McConnell, NBC News Radio.
Here we go.
Let's do it. Duncan Holder, Hour 2, Thursday, January 11th, coming to you live from downtown New Orleans, the greatest city on the planet, right outside the French Quarter, on a gray, kind of overcast day. But at least it's warm here.
Yeah, and it's not going to last.
Relatively speaking. You know.
2 quick shout-outs.
Sure.
One, to my poor wife who was sitting on the causeway since like 9:15 this morning because of some nasty wreck. They had to turn around. She went and had breakfast, got back on, and then she's stuck. So
what is it? Is it a wreck or is it the fog or both?
Well, it was both for a while. I think they've cleared the wreck, and now she's in like some slow-moving convoy.
That sounds miserable.
So I went through Slide Out to get here because I knew it wasn't happening the other way. And my other shout out is to, we call ourselves the Dance Monkey Boys out in the North Shore Bureau, Tito in Mandeville. I know he's listening.
And that voice that you're hearing right now, in case you're not familiar, is Jim Derry, colleague here at NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune, great prep editor, if you will, extraordinaire. And by the way, Jim has
talking about shout-outs,
been awarded a significant award by the LHSAA as Prep Writer of the Year. Congratulations to you.
Thank you, sir.
Well deserved. You do a yeoman's job covering all the prep coverage, leading our prep coverage, and it's amazing when I look at the amount of coverage that we put out on a Friday night football. It's amazing.
Yeah, I couldn't have done it without my friend Cocky Clyde this year.
And Clyde Berdan sitting in, and Larry Holder not here, getting the day off. He'll be back in the saddle tomorrow. And we are endeavoring without the great bald wonder for yet another day. It's funny, yesterday in the locker room, a couple of players were giving him grief. Mark Ingram was giving him grief.
Nice.
And as a matter of fact, in the middle of my interview with Thomas Morstead, he started playing the disrespect card, and he said, yeah, everybody jumped off the bandwagon. We had reporters shaving their heads here in town. A little indirect.
You know what? He looks better like that, though.
I think
I really do. I'm
off.
not just joking. I think he looks. He might want to keep the shaved look. I did it for St. Baldrick's about 8 or 9 years ago, and it really didn't work for me. And my hair grew back kind of like one of those funky trees we were just talking about, like kind of all over the place. It took about 6 months for it to get right.
How does that happen? How does your hair grow back differently?
Because
it's the same follicles.
I know, but it's like
roots.
when it comes out after there's nothing there, it just kind of like shoots out like a chia pet.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, after you shave your hair. I mean, most people that shave their heads, they shave it because they really kind of don't have a choice. Most people, not everybody. So when you have a full head of hair, not that I'm bragging that I'm almost 50
do have a
and
nice
have a full head of hair.
lush
when you shave it off, it comes out really weird.
Huh.
Well, so Larry, I know you're probably not listening, but
I will say this. Larry was very I give him credit for fulfilling his bet.
Absolutely.
I mean, we would have crushed him if he didn't, so he had to do it. But he was a little depressed a day later, and I don't think it had anything to do with the hangover that he had.
It's kind of depressing, man.
He was depressed. I literally was going to suggest some kind of grief counseling to him, but
when you love those
recovered.
locks, and you've had them as long as he had, I mean, nobody pulls off the visor like Larry Holder. Even Sean Payton doesn't wear his visor like Larry Holder
He's
does.
frat-tastic, as he always says.
There's no question.
Frat daddy, indeed.
We're thinking about Larry today and his wife, Joni, and he'll be back with us tomorrow to break down this game a little more. So let me go over the program the second hour. First of all, thanks to Fletcher Mackel, WGSU, and Kevin Seifert from ESPN for joining the program in the first hour and breaking down this Saints-Vikings game. We're getting ready to go to Pete Prisco here in about 5 or 10 minutes. Pete Prisco's longtime NFL reporter for CBS Sports. He used to work, I believe, at the Jacksonville Times-Union, if I remember correctly. I might have to ask Pete about that, but I'm pretty sure he did.
I think he did as well.
Covered, yes, the NFL for Jacksonville. And speaking of Jacksonville, my boy Jacksonville John Reed, one of my oldest friends in the business. John and I worked together in the Monroe News Star back in like the early 90s.
And he came here not too long after you came, right?
No, he came here before me.
Oh, he came before you?
Yeah, he was here before me. John covered preps for a long time here. He covered LSU for us. And then, of course, was the first reporter to cover the Hornets when they moved from Charlotte. And he covered the Hornets, Pelicans throughout their tenure here. And now is down in Jacksonville covering the Jaguars, and he's on the Leonard Fournette beat. So we'll get John's thoughts.
I was on the Leonard Fournette beat 4 years ago.
Yeah, so you all can relate on that. Had a great rookie year with the Jaguars. So we'll get John's thoughts on the Steelers-Jaguars games, and we'll also get Pete to weigh in on some of these other games because I'd be interested to hear what Pete says about this Saints Vikings game because Pete visited New Orleans for training camp this year, and I know he did a pretty big takeout on Drew Brees, and he was bullish on the Saints back then. I bet he's even more bullish now.
I won't spill it because I literally just pulled up his Prisco picks on CBSSports.com, and I'll let him kind of go into his reasoning for it. But yeah, I think it's kind of surprising considering where he's going with I think some of the other games this week.
Well, Pete is not shy with his opinions. I can tell you
Sean
that.
Payton has always been kind of fond of Pete, hasn't he?
Yeah, I was actually there one day when outside the interview room, I was talking to Peyton about something. I can't remember what it was. I think it might have been Hall of Fame, getting his thoughts on Hall of Fame. And Prisco was out there with us, and he just told Prisco, he goes, "Man, you're killing me. What are you doing?" And it was good nature, but it was also like, "What are you always criticizing me?" And I think Prisco was on that list for a while. There was this kind of blackball list, unofficial blackball list that Peyton had. No. And I think Pete might have been on it. I have to ask Pete if he was on that list because I know Peter King was on it. I was on it for a while. I've been off, I think, for a few years. I don't know officially or unofficially when I got off of it, but I know that Peter King just got off of it this past offseason.
Has anyone from ESPN ever been on it?
Oh, yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, Sean pretty much had I don't want to say vendetta, but he was against ESPN for a long time.
So Trips had a
He still holds Mike Triplett a little bit responsible, even though he and Mike Triplett get along great, because Mike is now at ESPN and not with us anymore. Yeah. He kind of holds Mike Triplett,
It's hard not to get along with Mike Triplett.
Oh, he's as good a guy as you get.
Really?
And a great reporter.
And he's a Cubs fan.
Does a great job. We miss him here, but he's doing great work at ESPN. And he works with Kevin Seifert, who we had on earlier today. So real quick, let's go into this game further. Just one aspect of the game that I think could come into play here. Will Lutz. What do you think?
I think Will Lutz is up to the task.
Really?
I mean, if it comes down to I have confidence in the kid. I mean, look at how he drilled that 57-yarder the other day. And I know it wasn't in a pressure situation enough to win the game, but when you go into a playoff game, and I'm almost like, what are they doing? And he just nailed it.
Yep.
And I have a lot of confidence in the kid. I really do. I think
it could come down to that,
It really could come down to that. And, I mean, look at how Garrett Hartley was pressed into what he was pressed into at a young age. And he came through, and I think that Sean's done a good job at finding the right guy for that spot, and I think Will Lutz is up to the task. And we're lucky that that Baltimore has a really, really good kicker, and that he was able to come here and they were able to sign somebody here.
Just sneak away. So look, all right, I agree with you on that. We'll find out if Pete Prisco thinks it's going to be as close a game as I think it's going to be. After this break, we'll come back and talk to Pete Prisco of CBSSports.com about the Saints Vikings. You're listening to Sports 1280, NOLA.com, the iHeartRadio app. We are Dunc and Holder.
I guess what I meant was he's not scared.
Now.
If he's not going to waste a lot of time with a guy who's not the right guy, put it that way.
Confirming entry plus
iHeartRadio. I agree.
And he's stuck with this guy.
Took some onions to cut four
right.
half.
That's what I really meant. I didn't, He does. And look, he could. A lot of people would have stuck with Hartley a lot longer than he did.
Yeah, they would have.
Yeah. And look, he helped get us. I mean, he got us to the Super Bowl and then kicked all those kicks in the Super Bowl. And he didn't hesitate. Look, you got one more chance.
Like 2 years later?
Yeah, exactly. You're going. So.
Your appliances.
But I think this kid's going to be a kicker here for a long
so
time.
should your savings. Come into the Home Depot and save up to 30%
I'll save this because
I was surprised he tried that field goal, by the way.
Top load washer
Did you see the story that Will Lutz said he didn't even know how long the kick was, until after he kicked it? They told him he just said he's quoted as saying he just ran on the field to kick the kick. He had no idea how long it was. He just knew that he had to go out and make a field goal and drilled it.
Didn't know how long it was.
Yeah, I'm about to say he came back and was like, oh, that was 57 yards? Oh, okay.
Maybe it's better to do it that way.
Pete.
All right, bud. Thank you.
I mean, they had to see the part of the fleur-de-lis at the bottom of his feet.
Yeah.
Brought to you by Meals on Wheels America and the Ad Council.
The nominees for the 2018 iHeartRadio Music Awards have been announced. Artists receiving multiple
Thanks
nominations
everyone on
include
YouTube, by the
Rihanna,
way.
Taylor
Appreciate
Swift,
that.
Yes,
Ed
all of
Sheeran,
them
Bruno
very
Mars,
complimentary.
Luis
Very
Fonsi,
complimentary.
Justin Bieber, DJ Khaled, and the
Very nice.
Chainsmokers.
Type it in.
Thank you.
The 2018 iHeartRadio Music Awards are set for Sunday, March 11th at the historic Fabulous Forum in Los Angeles.
Mr.
And for a full
Multimedia
list of
star.
categories, you can visit iHeartRadio.com/awards.
I don't dance now, I make money move.
Cardi B and Post Malone are among Forbes' 2018 Hip Hop Future Moguls list. The list, formerly known as Hip Hop Cash Princes, also includes Lil Pimp, 21 Savage, and Lizzo. Cardi B made the list thanks to the success of her breakout hit Bodak Yellow, which held the #1 spot on the Billboard
I'm
Hot
just laughing
100
at
singles
this
chart for
spot.
3 consecutive weeks. Post Malone
Oh.
and
Are you
21
see Taylor
Savage's
Swift when she comes?
inclusion
I already bought
was fueled
tickets
by
for the
the
wife.
pair's
Yes, that was her
collaboration
Christmas
on
present. That was her
Rockstar.
birthday present.
That's what
That was
she
her
wanted?
birthday / Christmas present. No, she didn't know it was coming.
30 seconds.
She
Bruce
wanted that?
Springsteen is offering
She didn't
tickets
want
to
it,
his sold-out
but she's
shows
always
on
wanted to see
Broadway
her.
as part of a charity
So that was her
contest.
surprise.
The
Happy
contest
birthday
benefits the Bob
/
Woodruff Family
Merry
Foundation
Christmas,
and is
'cause
run
it's on the
through
same day,
online
Jesus.
fundraising platform
I gave that
Amaze.
as
The
Merry
winner
Christmas
will be
present.
welcomed
Well, I
to
haven't-
New
looked
York
at
City
a
to
little
see
bit
the show, meet
weirdly.
Bruce Springsteen.
Well, I haven't told her how
and
much
take
those
home
tickets
a
cost.
signed
So
guitar.
That's exactly.
That's
Here we go.
the G. NBC News Radio.
This is Duncan Holder on Sports 1280, New Orleans.
Welcome back, Duncan Holder.
Dave is just
going old school today. I
he
love
plays,
it.
we start off so well, and then we start talking about Frankie Valli, and
no,
now
I'm
it's
talking
this.
about my Dance Monkey Boys, and he plays the monkeys. I mean, the guy is
a
on
wizard.
top of it.
Let's go down to Florida. Old friend of the program, old friend of mine, Pete Prisco from CBS Sports, visiting with us. And Pete, I know you were here for training camp. I remember seeing you out in the sultry August New Orleans weather, and you were bullish on the Saints back then. You still bullish on them? You think they got a shot in this game on Sunday up in Minnesota?
Oh, I think the championship game is going to be in New Orleans next week. It's going to be Atlanta and New Orleans.
Wow.
I think that's happening.
Wow.
I think the Saints go in there and win the game. And you know, a lot of people look at me and say, well, why would you pick them? And, you know, that defense is so good in Minnesota. Look, you know why I'm picking them? They have Drew Brees. For all the talk about they've run the ball this year, and Kamara's done a great job, and he's added a new dimension to the offense, and Ingram's been fantastic, this will come down to Drew Brees and his ability to make throws in clutch situations. It always does. That's what the playoffs are about. And Drew Brees is still one of the top quarterbacks. I know his numbers are down, but I think it's more of a volume thing. Drew Brees will win this game for the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I think when it gets down to the fourth quarter, I think this game's going to be close, and I think it's going to come down to who can make that critical play and in a critical situation. And the way Brees played last week against Carolina, I know Minnesota's defense is better on the back end than Carolina's, but I just feel like he's not going to make the critical error either, and I'm not so sure that Case Keenum can say the same thing. We don't know how he's going to react in this game. He's never been in it before. But Pete, first of all, do you think the noise and the environment there is going to be a factor, or do you think Brees' veteran experience will handle that?
Well, I think the veteran experience will handle that. I do. I mean, if this was a younger quarterback, not in that kind of situation in the past, then it might be a problem. But, I mean, let's be honest. It's better off that they're playing in that situation than if they're outside. I mean, their history is they'd rather play inside. And so I think it's an advantage for him. And I think he'll handle it well. I don't think that's going to be a problem.
Pete, Jim Derry here. The first matchup, they had such a tough time with that front line, and in particular, Griffin. And why do you think they're going to be able to handle that a little bit better this time?
Well, I think they didn't run the ball in that game either. Adrian Peterson tied Kamara for the rushing lead on that team that day with 18 yards, and we know he's been long gone, and Kamara's emerged as a much better player. So I think when you look at it from that standpoint, I think you're going to run the ball and take some of that. It's easy to, when you can't run the ball, to pin your ears back and go. So I think that'll help. I think the offensive line's in a better situation now than it was then, so that will help. But more than anything, I mean, look, Brees is when he gets play action, he could kill you with that, and I think that's why they got to establish to run the ball a little bit more.
What do you think about these other games away from this Saints-Vikings game? Jim and I were both saying that we think Philly's getting kind of overlooked, if that's crazy. They're the number one seed. Everybody's almost counting them out. and I know Atlanta's playing very well, but I think that game could be closer than maybe what people are giving Philly credit for. What's your thoughts on that other NFC game? Obviously, you're picking Atlanta to win because you think the NFC Championship game will be here. Why do you like Atlanta?
You know, it's easy to sit here and say, well, look what they did last year on offense, and they were explosive with that passing game, and they haven't been that this year. But you know what they have been lately is a really good defensive team.
Yep.
And, you know, even in the game in New Orleans a couple weeks ago, they played good defense that day. They're a talented defensive team. They can run to the football. They're fast. And I kind of expected that this year. I thought at some point, and they got off to a slow start. Remember, they started 4 rookies in the Super Bowl last year. I figured all those guys would elevate their game, and as a unit they would get even better. And it took them a while to get going and get used to each other again. But they're there now, and Tack McKinley has added another pass rushing dimension, which they badly needed. So I think this will be more about their defense and Nick Foles' inability to make plays against that defense than it will be a high-scoring offense. But I'm with you. I think a lot of people are discounting the Eagles, but when you look at the numbers, the better defenses in Atlanta, the better quarterbacks in Atlanta, the better playmakers are in Atlanta. I mean, to me, they're the better team right now.
What about the AFC games? To me, it looks like you got Ben Roethlisberger and Tom Brady going against much more inexperienced quarterbacks that really don't have any kind of pedigree the way Brady and Roethlisberger. Do you see any chance of an upset there? Can Jacksonville and that defense pull it off again?
Well, here's something that stands out for me in the Tennessee-New England game, and I'll start there first. New England is 31st in the league in yards per rush against. That is awful. That means that the team, last week the Chiefs went into that game against Tennessee 26th against the run in yards per attempt. And people always look at the rushing numbers and they say, oh, well, what are they ranked rushing? It's not what they're ranked rushing yards. It's what they're ranked rushing yards per attempt, because that tells you they can consistently run the ball on them. And in New England's 20th in rushing defense, but 31st in yards per attempt. The 20th is because they get behind them and they don't run the ball as much. But when you do run it, you can run it. So I think there's going to be opportunities for Henry to have a big day and control the clock. New England will win the game, but I think that's going to be a lot closer than people think.
And the other game, what do you think about Jacksonville-Pittsburgh?
Well, Jacksonville last week played a game, and everybody saw it. Bortles was awful. They didn't even try and throw the football because they knew they could limit Buffalo's offense to 3 points or 7 points and win the game 13-7 or 16-7 or something along those lines. They ended up winning 10-3, which was even better. But this time around, they can't do that. They went up there in Week 5 and picked off Ben Roethlisberger 5 times. That's not happening again. But I was in that locker room yesterday. I went over and talked to some guys. They walk around with a swagger on that defense, man. They think they're going up there and they're going to shut him down. I don't think they will. But I think on the flip side, if early in the game, if you look at the game early on, if they go run, put him in a 3rd and long situation, they have no chance. Right. If they allow him to throw on early downs, and he had a span in early December, 3-game span where he had 8 touchdown passes and no interceptions, and they allowed him to throw the ball and dictate tempo and get comfortable on early downs. They won those games, and he was outstanding. They got to let him go. I know it sounds crazy, but if they put him in obvious passing situations, they have no chance.
Well, Pete, I think this game comes down to a lot to Le'Veon Bell, and obviously the Jags have been very good against the pass, but maybe not so great against the run. What kind of number do you think Bell needs to have for Pittsburgh to be a little bit more successful and take the pressure off of Big Ben?
Yeah, I think that's what they'll do. I think they'll run Bell. I mean, you mentioned their run defense. They've had problems against the run. They've had a lot of bad run fits. Their young team, when they get beat on defense, they're usually bad run fits and usually bust in the secondary. They're not by getting beat up physically. So I agree with you. I think Bell is the guy that's going to keep Pittsburgh going in this game. He wasn't a great factor the last time around. He didn't do a lot in that game, but he was coming off that sitting out the start of the season. So I think when you look at it, he will get back and be a much more active participant, both running the ball and catching the ball this week.
Pete, circling back to the Saints, this is a little off the Saints-Vikings topic, but I'm kind of curious. We had Peter King on earlier in the year a couple of times, and he made a point of saying that he was finally off the blackball list from Sean Payton. Were you ever on it? Were you ever in Sean's doghouse over the years?
I've been in it. Yeah, I've been in it.
I think we all have, right? I mean,
look, I've gotten those phone calls from him with a few, not so nice words here and there, and you know what I do? I tell him, I said, Sean, and I had a nice conversation with him at the Combine, and I say, Sean, of all the people in this league, you scream and yell at me, and I was one of the few national guys that were calling you the best play caller in the National Football League for a long time. And you call me and berate me over something I wrote about, I think it was Greg Williams even back in the day.
Yes.
And Jeff, you'll remember the game because it was a game where I think it was against the Jets where the defense was suffocating and Sean's offense stunk. Remember?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And they didn't move the football. And Sean came to the podium and he was getting all angry and agitated with questions. And I wrote it that way. And I said he acted like a wide receiver who, instead of catching 10 passes for 149 yards and losing the game, caught 2 for 12, and he was angry about it, and they won the game. So he got mad at me over that. That was one of the situations. But there have been plenty of them.
I know. That's Sean Payton. It's kind of, the more you know him, the more you understand his personality, the more you kind of can come to appreciate him. And it just takes time, right? I mean, you've covered the league a long time. You've covered a lot of coaches. And there's a learning process. And what I think's happened with Sean Payton personally is I think he's learned a lot of this stuff doesn't matter. A lot of these, I call it windmill jousting that he was doing early in his career. He's learned that's not what wins and loses football games, and he's backed off that, and I think he's a much better coach because of it.
Yeah, and I don't mind it. I mean, you know me, Jeff.
Yeah,
I'll get right back. I
you
give
definitely
it right
don't.
back to you. I don't care. I'm in the same. I'm probably cut from a lot of the same cloth as Sean Payton. Although I probably would do it a little differently. I mean, I'd needle guys. I'd say, "Oh, you got me on that one, huh?" But you were wrong. I'd needle him. I wouldn't get angry about it. I just give him a little needle. I think he has a tendency to get angry about it, but I respect him for it. I think he's feisty. I think his team takes on that personality, and like I said, I think he's always been a really good play caller, one of the best in the league. And I didn't agree with his decision last week, though. By the way, I'll put that out there right now. I thought that was a terrible decision. Punt the damn
punt? No.
Yeah, I didn't like it either, but I understood it. I didn't think it was the most egregious decision he's made, but I didn't agree with it. Okay, real quick, before we let you go, I know
it wasn't fourth and jackass like Belichick had in Indianapolis a couple of years ago, but it wasn't good. You should have punted him in there.
Look, I know you're a proud Sun Devil. Arizona State, Herm Edwards. Is this going to work? Well, give me the reason why it's going to work. I think it's going to be a colossal failure.
It doesn't matter who the head coach is at any university if you're not, getting the top players like the top dogs do. I mean, it's the same teams over and over again. Alabama, Ohio State, now Georgia, who loads up on every recruiting class. Oklahoma's been getting him for years. It's the same thing. I mean, how can you compete with that? It doesn't matter who the coach is. If you don't get players, whatever way you get them, and you have to get them, you're not going to win. Doesn't matter who the head coach is. Think about it. Look at it's the same teams over and over and over again. Who are the favorites next year?
Not LSU.
Right, Georgia.
No, you're right. You're right.
That's LSU.
And I've always said that about college football. It's like a country club now, and the Power 5 schools do not want you to be able to rise up and compete the way a lot of them did over the years. They've now made an exclusive country club, and it goes against me.
Alabama makes $90 million, and their athletic department generates $90 million, and $40 million of that is profit. How the heck can you compete with that?
Oh, well, I know they're throwing money around. It's crazy. Here in LSU, they bought billboards for every recruit that they sign in their hometown and paid for billboard in their town to kind of advertise it. That's money. That's a lot of money. That shows you how much money they got to throw around in these college programs. You're right. All right, Pete, thanks a lot for the input, buddy. We're really glad to have you on the program. It's great to hear your voice as always, and good luck to you. Where, are you going to be somewhere this weekend, or are you going to be hanging?
I go to Fort Lauderdale every week, man. We do studio shows down there. I don't go to games anymore. I'm in Fort Lauderdale 3-4 nights a week.
I know. You always got that great tan, which I'm always envious of.
Yeah. Not so much right now, though, because it's been cold in Jacksonville. I can tell you that. I'm sure you guys have got the cold weather as well.
Yeah, well, we're getting ready to go into unbelievably cold weather in Minneapolis. I'm not looking forward to it.
Yeah,
all right.
Me either.
I know. I hear you, Bo. I know you got thin blood down there in Florida. So thanks again, Pete. Good hearing from you, bud.
All right, guys. Take care.
All right, take care. That's Pete Prisco, CBS Sports. He's been doing it for a long time. He knows the league, as you can tell, inside and out, and it's always good to get his thoughts on the program. All right, we're going to take a break, come back and talk to John Reed, old friend of the program, old friend of New Orleans, about the Jaguars and the Pittsburgh Steelers, and get his thoughts on Leonard Fournette's rookie year down there in Jacksonville. You're listening to Sports 1280, NOLA.com, the iHeartRadio app. We are Dunc and Holder.
Your forecast on Sports 1280, New Orleans.
Jets game. Remember
this
the
report
game?
is
when they
Subway.
shit out of
Thursday from the
Monsanto.
Fox 8 Weather Center. I'm meteorologist Shelby Latino. Some showers around today, as well as mostly cloudy skies. Temperatures climbing into the 70s, though. Enjoy it while we have it, because a strong cold front moves through tonight. That could spark up a few more showers and storms in the overnight hours, but we'll be drying out as we head into tomorrow, and colder, windier air moves in. We'll see temperatures in the 40s all day long tomorrow, and feeling even colder because of that wind. From the Fox 8 Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Shelby Latino. Have a great day.
It's almost
One
kind of like
great
that
meal
youthful
for under
kind
$5 because
like,
Subway
obviously
restaurants
he's
have 5. That's
out to
one of
make his
5
own
6
name
inch subs plus
from,
chips and a 21-ounce
He's got his
fountain
own
drink
name
for
now, but back then,
$4.99 only at Subway. Limited time only at participating restaurants. Additional charge for extras plus
why
added
he
tax.
never brought
The 4 for 4 from Wendy's has a lot of fans because it's a deal that gives you a sandwich plus 4 nuggets, a small fry, and drink, all for just $4. But now the 4 for 4 has more variety than ever with 8 sandwich choices.
I'm loyal to the double stack.
I'm Junior Bacon Cheeseburger through and through.
I pledge myself to the crispy chicken sandwich.
I'm loyal to my hunger.
Whether you're loyal to one,
Hey, John Reed's not answering.
pick your favorite. Now,
Hey, Jeff.
I got you. John's not answering.
Oh, yeah, we can't get him?
It's 504-232-3013, right?
Oh, you know what? I might be giving you the wrong number. Let me give you the other number.
Okay.
I'm sorry. God, I'm glad you said that, buddy.
All those moving targets. Easy. With
Yeah, he's got a
It
new
seemed
number,
weird.
and I was giving you his wrong one. So.
All right. Let me know when you're ready.
I'm a cheese ball.
And
let me
even
see.
television. Because, hey, who has time to sit and watch TV? So when you want to connect with all those constantly moving adults, teens, and millennials, get to iHeartMedia.com and put AM/FM
you ready,
radio to
Dave?
work for your company.
Yeah.
All right, 813-981-4843.
Okay. All right.
Special buys, like a Samsung high-efficiency top-load washer and electric dryer. More room to do laundry, using less energy with all the power. Only $498 each. Just one of the ways you'll save up to 30% on appliance special buys. The Home Depot. More saving, more doing. U.S. only while supplies last. Gas dryer extra. See store for details. Valid through January 17th.
Lou Williams drops a career-high 50 points. The Clippers get a 125-106 win over the Warriors in Oakland. Sweet Lou on LA's first 50-point game since 1990.
It's a great accomplishment. For me, it was more important to get a win.
Meanwhile, with no Splash Brothers in the lineup for Golden State, Kevin Durant put up 40 points in the loss, becoming the second youngest player to reach 20,000 career points behind only LeBron James.
All right, we got him now in
bud.
30 seconds. Yep.
Is losing a trio of players to the NFL draft. Wide receiver Calvin Ridley, defensive tackle Ron Payne, and running back Bo Scarborough, all announcing Wednesday they're leaving school early to turn pro. Meanwhile, running back Damian Harris says he'll return to Tuscaloosa next season. Major League Baseball reports surfacing Jay Bruce is agreeing to a 3-year contract to return to the Mets. And a top baseball agent looking for a new job after being accused of filming players in the shower. CSC Talent announced Wednesday they've fired baseball president Jason Wood. That's sports. Jake Orwin, NBC News Radio.
Here we go.
Your teams, your sports. 1280 New Orleans.
I think we're the real thing here.
Throwback
Duncan Holder.
Thursday?
You didn't even know. You guys didn't even notice. It really kind of upsets me. I got my shout out here to Matt Nagy. Wearing my Arena Bowl 21 pullover.
I saw when you
What
walked
about
in.
did Matt Nagy?
He
coach
played
in
in
it?
Arena
Played
Bowl
it?
21.
I didn't
He
know
was
that.
the quarterback for the Columbus Destroyers, and they got destroyed
I didn't
by
know
the
that.
San Jose SaberCats.
SaberCats.
Mark Grebe.
I know he's really well thought of in NFL circles. That was a big-time get.
He was a really
by the
good
Bears.
Arena League quarterback. I covered the Arena League for 5 years. And,
Jay Gruden.
Yeah, I mean, he was.
Yeah, Jay Gruden, former Louisville quarterback.
Yeah.
Just get that little shout-out in there to the Louisville Cardinals. Let's go down to Jacksonville, Florida again. Back-to-back guests from Jacksonville, Florida. John Reed visiting the program for the second time. Jacksonville, John Reed. John and I go back, as I said before, to the Monroe News Star days. We used to work at the Monroe News Star together. And I used to dominate John in basketball, pick up basketball games so much that
I doubt that seriously.
so much that he left Monroe and went to New
I'm not
Orleans.
buying it, JR. I don't believe it at all.
You couldn't stop me in the post. You know that. You know that's the truth, man. Come on now.
I was drawing a lot of charges.
JR, you give him a few elbows.
Gave Jeff a couple of elbows, a couple of dunks.
John was
John's a baller, man.
I would describe John's game as a modern day DeMarcus Cousins without the 3-point shot. He was like a bull in the china shop in the lane.
I believe that.
That's my scouting analysis.
Even I knew, even then, as a big man, you can't be a point guard.
Yeah, tell that to Boogie. Tell that to Boogie.
Yeah, I've been seeing Boogie from a distance. I don't think he's following what Coach Alvin Gentry telling him to do what he did the other night.
Shocker.
Yeah.
Shocker. Boogie's not following what the coach tells him.
I don't think Alvin Gentry's the first coach Boogie hasn't listened to. All right, John, let's switch gears. Let's talk about the Steelers-Jaguars game because I think it's a very intriguing matchup. Jacksonville went into this same Heinz Field and dominated Pittsburgh. I shouldn't say dominated. It was actually a close game, and then it kind of blew open in the fourth quarter. But we just had Pete Prisco on the show, and he said he was in the locker room yesterday and that he noted that Jacksonville's players are very confident, almost cocky about this game. You get that same vibe from them?
Yeah, but I don't think I think they could easily also go back and forth with words. You know, Pittsburgh, to me, seems to be the team that's trying to do the trash talking from a distance. You know, they're saying they're already getting prepared for the Patriots, and Roethlisberger is, you know, he's talking about that he's been waiting to, you know, have a rematch against these guys, and they're not going back and forth, even though we haven't spoken to Jalen Ramsey yet. But I don't think they – I'll say this. Going back to October to that game, I really felt that you know, the Jaguars came into that and just physically, I wouldn't say dominated, but I didn't think Pittsburgh was expecting them to be as physical as they were, particularly on the defensive side. And you're looking at a Steelers team that, I mean, they pretty much turned their season around after that loss and won 10 of the last 11 going into this game. And obviously they had that first round bye, but I think these guys feel that they could go up there and pretty much they're not fearful of Pittsburgh and they feel that they can you know, they just got to get the offense together. I think that's the issue with this football team. But defensively wise, I think they feel they can match up with Pittsburgh and force some takeaways and do what they need to do to stop the ground game.
John, Jim D here. We miss you over here, buddy.
Yeah, I miss, man. I tell you what, it's been a long time. You know, 24 years in the same place in New Orleans, and you know, even though I'm back home here, man, it's a lot of memories, a lot of good people there, and never be forgotten.
We'll make your way over here in the off season. We'll go have a drink or two. Look, I want to ask you. You know, everybody's saying, well, they had 5 picks in the first game, and that's not going to happen again. Well, why won't it happen again? I mean, I don't understand why everyone is just assuming that the same Jacksonville defense that just stymied Ben Roethlisberger the first time, why they can't come and have a same kind of performance. I mean, maybe 5 picks is a little unrealistic, but, I mean, if they did it once, I don't understand why people automatically think they can't do it again.
Well, it's a Jaguars persona, you know. You know, even though these guys won 10 games during the regular season, and you know, you look at the things that they did, they won the AFC South. It's just a matter of that, number one, they're not on TV, wasn't on television, hardly at all on national television, and drawing respect around the league, you have to do it more than one season. And Pittsburgh is a team, you know, obviously the tradition we all know, but they don't foresee Jacksonville as this dominant team, and I don't think the perception around the country feels that, you know, I mean, it's hard to even fantasize. You go from 3-13, and these guys are 3-13 a year ago, and basically turn the season around, and I feel that they have, you know, no question, elite caliber defense. They added the right pieces that needed to be added as far as leadership. I think their defensive front by far is one of the best, and I just think that the people around the country hadn't seen what this team is capable of, and physically what they can do to opposing team. I mean, you face them. I don't care who you are. I mean, you're going to get a physical matchup. Now, Jacksonville may not win, but they're going to be in a physical game against them. And who is to say that they can't do that? I mean, I don't think they can intercept Ben 5 times again, but I do think that they can play man coverage with their receivers. They got a defensive front that sacked them twice. That's going to put pressure on them. They got linebackers that with athletic ability that can cover the field from side to side. And you put all that together, I mean, I think that Pittsburgh's in for a difficult situation here. I mean, you know, I know they're sitting at number 2 in the AFC and had that first round bye, but I think they physically matches up with Pittsburgh. The problem I see that probably won't allow them to beat Pittsburgh is their offense. I just don't. It hadn't been clicking for the last 3 weeks. The run game with Leonard Fournette hadn't really done anything, you know, to be honest. I mean, he's getting tackled with 4 guys almost after you get the handoff. So their problem is going to be offensively against Pittsburgh. But as far as defense, it's going to be a challenge for the Steelers.
Hey, John. Continue with the John Reed Love Fest. This is Clyde. It's good to talk to you again. Good. Hope you're doing well.
What's up, Clyde?
And you really led into my question, which was, you know, I saw Leonard Fournette in 3 years with my own 2 eyes. I've seen him, you know, 100-yard kickoff against Notre Dame. I saw what he did against Syracuse, what he did against Ole Miss. I've seen all these things that he did in college, and I don't think I would have expected the year that he had in the NFL with the Jaguars, specifically with everything that they had going on going into this year. And like you said, coming off 3-13. Can you talk a little bit about how he's progressed from the time he got drafted up until now, specifically with, you can imagine that he would have a good year. He'd be probably a good rookie, but not a really great rookie that runs for 1,000 yards. And just talk a little bit about how he's changed and how he's at sometimes helped the Jaguar offense kind of go when Blake Bortles hasn't.
Well, you know, the biggest thing I think when he came in definitely was all business, but I thought even from watching him, I mean, saying Augustine to LSU, I mean, I thought it would take him time to adjust to the physical demands of the NFL game. And, you know, I really think a lot of credit goes to Doug Marrone, to how they kind of brought him along from OTAs through training camp. I mean, they basically say you got to earn everything with the Jaguars. You're not coming in here. There's no automatic starting position. And, I mean, when they got to the 3rd and 4th preseason game, we were like, well, wait a minute now. He's still not starting.
Right.
But what it did was it made him understand that. I think a lot of times it's been real easy for Leonard Fournette. I mean, you go back to high school, and he was the biggest guy. He ran over guys. He ran over guys at LSU. He had the burst. He had the vision. And in this NFL game, I mean, it's just that, I mean, he had all those attributes, but I think the challenge that they made him, that he had to work for like everything. I mean, it's almost like was a reprogram with him. And at first, I don't think Leonard was used to the way he was being sort of treated here in Jacksonville. Like, he was just another player. And another thing here, you know, when you go in Louisiana and New Orleans, I mean, you probably can just say Leonard and everybody know who you're talking about. I mean, here, I mean, he didn't come here embraced by this community immediately after he got drafted. And now, I mean, I think he learned those lessons. He wanted to fit in, and the veterans accepted it. You know, they saw his work ethic. They saw his ability. And, I mean, from there, I think he just learned what it took to be an NFL pro. And, you know, and there wasn't no special privileges for him. I mean, he missed some meetings and things like that. He got suspended for that. I mean, I think he learned how to be a pro. That it came gradually, and I always thought that he had the physical talent to play in this league, but I just didn't think that it would come so immediately with his adjustment to this game. And I tell you what, I mean, that's been in that Pittsburgh game in October. I mean, 90-yard run in the third quarter. He showed the burst. He's taken a physical pounding, but I mean, he's been injured with ankle situations. But I mean, over the course of the season, I think he's been everything and beyond from what a fourth overall pick in the draft, and he exceeded expectations by far with this franchise.
No doubt about it. John Reed, Jacksonville Times-Union. John, thanks for jumping on the program. I know you're busy. When you heading up to Pittsburgh?
Heading up on Saturday morning in 18-degree weather. We're going from 74 to 18. So
we're in the same boat, big dog. All right, thanks, John. Always good to hear from you, buddy.
Talk to you later, buddy.
All right, take care, guys. Appreciate it.
That's John Reed, Jacksonville Times-Union, Jaguars beat writer, and one of the best people in the business.
Absolutely.
He's talking about Leonard Fournette, and I'm going to tell you a real quick story that I've told before, but I had gone to news for about 5 or 6 years, get a break from sports. I come back to sports, get back on the prep beat, and second game of the year in 2013, I'm covering Covington and St. Aug, and I'd heard all this stuff about Leonard Fournette and blah, blah, blah. Well, I get up to the top at Jack Salter Stadium, and I'm like, I don't even know what his number is at the time, and I'm like, I wonder if I can, oh, wait a minute, I don't need his number. There he is.
Right.
I mean, you knew just looking on the field, before in warm-ups, him standing on a sideline, you could tell. I mean, the kid had an NFL body at age 17 or 18.
To that end, when I was working on the story that I did on him, I think it was his senior year at St. Aug, I talked to a Division I head coach. I won't say who it is, but he told me at the time that Leonard Fournette was better right then at that moment at St. Aug than any running back the Saints had.
That's insane.
And
I think he was insane.
Right. I mean, I saw the kid do things in high school that I've never seen anyone do. And look, I saw Puka Williams go for 3,000 yards this season, and Leonard Fournette is by far, 27 years in covering and doing this, by far the best high school football player I've ever seen.
When he returned the kickoff against Notre Dame in the Music City Bowl for 100 yards, I said, literally in that press box, I cannot wait to see what this kid does in the next 2 years.
There's never been a better athlete. Never been a better athlete from around this area.
Agreed. All right, well, let's take our final break, guys. We'll come back and wrap it up and talk a little bit more about Leonard Fournette and also about some of these other NFL playoff games, because we haven't touched it all on New England, Tennessee. It sounds like that one we're all in agreement on. It's not going to be much of a game. All right, you're listening to Sports 1280, NOLA.com, the iHeartRadio app. We are Dunc and Holder.
Hi,
You're
Eric.
rolling today, Dave.
Inside.
Yeah, you're right.
Now for 16 years, talking sports, politics, and news. Talking everything New Orleans, everything Louisiana. Looking forward to joining the crew as we'll tell them.
Yeah, it's funny. When I first started DJing, and when I was like, I don't know, I guess 17, 18 years old, the bar that I hung out, everybody was like in their 40s and 50s, and I was like, barely, not even 20. But so, this is the kind of music I started DJing with, man. All these oldies and old rock and shit. Yeah.
Never, no fee, refund advance.
It's like flashback day for me.
Play. Go to Jackson Hewitt today, and you could get up to $3,200. Optional tax refund. About the actual tax refund. You can e-file without applying. Fees for other optional products may apply. Availability and loan amount subject to conditions.
The crazy part, though, is that most of these songs are so much shorter than the songs together.
Yeah, that's right.
Like 2.5 minutes.
Yeah, right, exactly.
To update.
They didn't have really long songs like they do nowadays. These 3-4 minute deals.
Yeah, you couldn't go off and get a smoke break in between songs, man.
Exactly.
Just to get organized.
They did it on purpose.
And help you save.
You know what?
Starting at $3.98. All projects have a starting point. Start with Lowe's. Faucet offer valid through January 17th. Tote offer valid through January 31st. While supplies last, see store for details.
There's a powerful connection between the dollar and Taco Bell, where you can unlock a world of 20 decadent menu items from breakfast to late night for just $1 each. 20 items for just $1.
Breakfast.
I didn't either.
You're starving right now.
All of a sudden, it just hit me. Like, what are you doing, Duncan?
I got some M&Ms. That's all I had time for. When I heard the bridge was closed.
M&Ms.
When I heard the bridge was closed, I stopped at Walgreens. I got me a drink and some M&Ms. Hey,
y'all are crazy. That's not breakfast. It's not a breakfast, man.
I'm Tony Gold.
Maybe we should open our own breakfast place. We'll
That
just
wouldn't be
have
terrible.
candy bars.
One thing about Mandeville is it's a ton of breakfast places.
Yes, there is.
And most of them very, very good.
Really? Believe it.
Best breakfast place in the city that nobody knows about. Liz's Way Yeah Diner.
Facebook is trying
never
to
even heard
serve
of
you
it.
up some
It's
local
fantastic.
social
Mandeville?
network is
Yeah,
testing a new
you got to
section
make it.
inside
You got to make.
I've seen those. I think we've done some stories on that.
You're gonna have to make your way up to me. I mean, it's seriously, it's my favorite
Facebook
breakfast
is using
place.
a mix of
Like
humans
old school
and
breakfast, like
machine
bacon,
learning software
eggs,
to
traditional,
surface the
all
content
kinds of
for the
stuff.
new
I mean,
section.
they have
Facebook
something
says
called
the
they
service
have
is
egg
part of their
sardine.
journalism
They
project
put a
initiative,
poached
which aims
egg
to fight fake
on a
news. Sold
on a
Electronics
English
out with
muffin
some
and
ear
with
headphones
cream
that
spinach
claim
on
they
top.
can correct your running form. The headphone sensors track different parameters
fantastic.
like cadence,
Damn,
stance,
that sounds
shot,
good. You're
and
driving me
depth.
crazy right
Yeah,
now.
seriously.
Stop talking.
I know, I'm like starving.
The trainer will tell
Make your
I'm
mouth
stuck here for
water,
another 2
boy.
hours, and Eric's going to be talking all about, all the food at Oceana. I'm freaking dying.
Come on into
help
Katie's.
that. The Google
Oh,
Arts and
Katie's
Culture app
rocks,
prompts you to
dude.
take a
Katie's
selfie
is really
I
good.
love that place.
That's one of my wife's big
man.
customers.
It is expensive, but it's
Instantly
good.
Find people who
Yeah.
But
in his
One of my
story
wife's big
10 seconds.
customers.
via its 1,000 partner museums. Tech Report,
Go there about
Larry
once a
Olson, NBC News
Yeah, it's a
Radio.
great neighborhood restaurant.
Duncan Holder now. Eric Asher next at noon on Sports 1280 New Orleans.
Welcome back. Last segment here in hour 2 of Duncan Holder. Throwback Thursday.
You know, it's funny that he plays Aretha Franklin at the end because I went driving in here on my long drive, had to go through Slidell from Mandeville because the causeway was all messed up. But they were talking about it on NFL radio. Everyone was calling about how their respective team was being disrespected. I mean, fans of, I think, of all 8 teams called and said my team's being disrespected. So, except New England, I think. I don't think anyone from Boston called. But so they started playing Aretha Franklin, R-E-S-P-C-T, and Rodney Dangerfield. It's funny. No fan thinks their team's getting enough respect this time of year.
Yeah, and they always hear this talk, and I get a lot of it in my Twitter timeline, social media. Why is the national media not on? The national,
exactly.
They care so much about national recognition.
Right.
Who cares?
And who cares? I was looking at some of the comments yesterday, and actually most of the comments were pretty respectful, which is actually semi-unusual. That I picked the Vikings. I was planning, bracing myself, but most of them. But it's like, why do you care what I think anyway? I mean, I want you to read my column. Don't get me wrong. I don't mean it like that. I mean, why is it affecting your personal happiness, I guess is the way I should say, as Bob Fortis used to say.
I think that's true. That is a Fortisism. But I think people, more so than anywhere I've ever lived and any other team I've ever covered, the Saints are family to New Orleanians.
There's no question.
I mean, it is, and that's just New Orleans in general. I think they feel that way about their music, their cuisine, the culture, Mardi Gras, Jazz Fest. I mean, it is part of your lifestyle.
Hey,
you are.
I grew up, my DNA, I mean, when I was 8 years old, even before that, my dad would get up on the roof and try to move the antenna so we'd get Channel 10 because the Saints were always blacked out in New Orleans. So I understand.
Wait, who we got, Dave? Dave.
Caller on the line. Go ahead.
Bart.
I'm sorry.
Hey, guys.
Bart in Metairie.
Hold on, sorry, man. Hold on a minute. Hold on.
No worries.
Going into this game that was in the first game, but what about Minnesota? Other than Sam Bradford and like Dalvin Cook, are they pretty much intact from that first game?
Yeah, well, they're missing Dalvin Cook. He went out early in the season. They are one of the Vikings are one of the healthiest teams in the league. They're hardly missing anybody other than, of course, their 2 starting quarterbacks and Dalvin Cook, which you can't discount that. That's what's been such a revelation is that Case Keenum was technically the 3rd-string quarterback.
But Latavius Murray and Jerick McKinnon have both played very well. So, I mean, not saying you don't miss a guy like Dalvin Cook, but we don't even know what they really missed because he's a rookie and he only played in a few games. Or was it 2 or 3 games before he got hurt?
About 3 games, yeah.
So, I mean, we don't even know what they're really missing. So they are what they've been the past 10 weeks, and they've done it with McKinnon and Murray. So, I mean, they are one of the healthiest teams, and they aren't missing very much, especially on that defense which is just, I mean, you can go through the list of stars that we've talked about throughout this entire game, and Griffin and Harrison and Rhodes, and, you know, just keep going through the list. I don't think there's one player that probably couldn't start for any NFL team on that Vikings defense.
Yeah, I agree. Bart, we missed the first part of your
players that have turned over from this game.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah,
crazy.
I know. Look, these are two of the. And I know the Saints are banged up. Clyde mentioned earlier how many guys they have on IR, but the saving grace for the Saints is most of the players are role players that the Saints have lost. All 6 of their Pro Bowlers are healthy, so the key players are still healthy for the Saints. I think that's critical.
Except for Klein and Pete.
Yeah, but they're not. I mean, those are, I think, role players. I don't think they're the critical guys, in my opinion.
Starting left guard as a role player?
Yes, no question. The best players on they cannot afford to lose are number 9, Cam Jordan, Marshawn Lattimore, and Taron Armstead. They could make do with anybody else. Maybe Mike Thomas too, because he's such a great number 1 receiver. They haven't lost any of those guys.
2 minutes.
You can replace the rest of them. Bart, thanks for your call and thanks for the points there, because I think the health of these teams is one of the reasons why it's such an intriguing matchup, because most of the stars are still on the field.
Well, the problem, Dunc, is that you talk – I don't necessarily disagree. I do a little bit. But part of it is –
Andres Pete is replaceable. He's a good player, but Cindy Clemente, there's not much of a drop-off.
The problem is if any one of those linemen get hurt on Sunday, the Saints are in deep doo-doo.
Well, maybe. I understand what you're saying.
I mean, they are so thin now at offensive line, and don't get me wrong, all 5 of those guys have played very well and above their heads. And look, I mean, Max Unger doesn't get enough credit. Well, I mean, hardly anyone ever mentions his name, but what a season that guy's had this year. But if they lose any of those guys, especially Matt Unger, I think he's Max Unger. I think he is the most important guy on the line right now. And
we haven't even said anything about Ryan Ramczyk.
And Ramczyk can play all over the place on the line, but if they lose any of those guys,
there's a drop-off. There's no doubt.
A major drop-off.
They could survive.
1 minute.
There is a drop-off once we get past this starting group that they're going to have on Sunday.
And on defense, besides Cam Jordan, I think the way Manti Te'o is playing right now, if he were to go out at any point in the game, I mean, who's going to fill in the middle there? I mean, who's going to you're calling him a role player, but now that he's come in for Klein and as important as he's been, I don't know.
He's a role player. All right, that's it for this program.
Great show.
Great show as always. I want to thank Fletcher Mackel, Kevin Seifert, Pete Prisco, and John Reed. We had a great guest list. I want to shout out to Larry Holder. Hope everything's going well with you. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow. I want to thank Jim Derry, Clyde, as always, for stepping in. David DeCorbier, our great producer, for spinning the hits behind the glass. And, man, this thing went fast.
It does. Anytime you need me, call me.
We'll do it. All right, that's it for today's show. We will be back tomorrow, and you are listening, as always, to Sports 1280, NOLA.com, the iHeartRadio app. We are Duncan Holder.
Who dat, y'all?
Peace.
Louisiana Hospitality Foundation presents the 7th
Thanks, Dave.
All right, guys.
Guide me through, buddy.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for being nice to me, Dave.
Hops and Cops. All right, talk to you later.
See you, bud.
29th at 1001 Harrison Avenue in City Park. This is a